Okay, good.
So cold. I don't want the wetland.
Okay, call to order. Oh, the Planning, Environment, and Development Public Meeting. Call to order the Planning, Environment, and Development Public Meeting for May 2nd, 2023. We'll have a roll call. Joe? Here. Here. Carolyn?
Here.
John? Here. Jim?
Here.
Here. Lou?
Here.
And Carl? And I'm here, so that's all of us. Could I get a motion to approve the minutes for the April 4th Planning, Environment, and Development Committee meeting? Moved by Carl, seconded by Mr. Kattner. Is there any comments regarding the meeting minutes for April 4th? No comments, we'll go to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, meetings are approved. Public comments. Scott, if you would get, if you're gonna get that for me, that'd be great, thank you. Okay, great. We got three. Okay. Follow the same rules as the county board meetings for public comment. Please introduce yourself and you'll have 3 minutes to speak your piece. Hi, Mr. Vanderspool.
Good morning. My name is Jan Vanderspool. I live at 8708 Bull Run Trail, Woodstock, Illinois, basically corner of Mason Hill and Country Club. I've appeared before this board numerous times and repeat my handout with you about my objection to ancillary dwelling units on estate zoning as a right. I keep hoping that everybody's read that by now and that various crises have come and gone for some of you and that I can have a dialogue with you. But today I'm really here to continue my thoughts on spongy moths. Last month, myself, speaking of my property, spoke of an infestation so thick that when it was chemically sprayed for, the ground was covered almost literally body to body with caterpillars. We also heard from an area of about 90 acres that had a bad infestation last year, and they brought in a collection of larvae on the trees that's proven that it's going to happen again. Since that meeting, I had an arborist come out to my property and he said, look at all those egg masses under the branches, at the bottom of the branches. You're going to have an outbreak this year again. Although in the presentation we saw last month, they showed a spike and then a fall, and we kept asking, when is that fall going to happen? And we were told, the year after. Well, we've got proof before you of 2 hot spots that are going to get eaten and defoliated completely again this year. That's a problem. Several other things that I understood from the presentation last month was I understood the studies as focused on still the time frame that we were trying to stop the spread of spongy moss westward. We understand that's done and gone, and the studies seem to be in that time frame that spoke of a rise and a fall. We need help now with monitoring hot spots, treating hot spots, responding to hot spots in a timely manner with the naturally occurring BTK bacteria. There has to be a broader approach. We have to get out of the past mode. We need to look at the current situation and understand that it hasn't gone away after a year. And 2 years is critical, 3 years is certainly deadly. I've got the arborist came and looked at my prize tree on the property. He said, what an incredible crown.
Okay, Mr. Vanderspool, it's been 3 minutes. Can you please?
Okay. So I really urge this board and the county board to push forward a plan to monitor hot spots and carry the research forward, respond faster than it takes to get past all the other agencies that takes multiple years to agree on where to spray. Let's get over it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. George Richardson?
Good morning, George Richardson. I'm here representing Richardson Farm. So my brother Robert, his wife Carol, we're the 5th generation on our farm. My son Ryan is full-time in the business. So, you know, we do different things, and we are all for historic preservation of our own farmstead and different buildings around the county. And I've been working since January with Jack Pease, Kirk McAlka, the Historic Society, to try to dismantle the Octagon barn on the Kattner farm and dismantle it, move it to my farm, reassemble it with historic methods, and then turn it into an event center, which we think will be very good use for that structure. And then in my conversations, I just recently became aware of the Kattner County Historic Preservation Committee efforts to landmark these 3 buildings on the Kattner farm. And Jack Pease is like, you know what, I'll just throw up my hands and walk away if that's the case. But it's, in talking with, you know, Kirk McAlka, we all like historic preservation, but without a purpose, a sustainable source to keep these buildings updated and improved and an ongoing income stream, not all of them work. And Elizabeth Kessinger at the McHenry County Conservation District would love to have the land, but she says, I don't want any more buildings. I still have buildings that I can't resurrect because it just takes so much ongoing money all the time to do that. I believe the best use of this Octagon barn is to let me dismantle it and move it. I know that if it gets landmark status through the county, it's still possible to do that, but it's going to tie my hands and require more effort and time. I've got my team in place, I've got the contracts let, and $40,000 down with a roofing company to dismantle the roof, tear off the shingles, they're the wrong thing, dismantle the roof board by board, save those, and then a timber frame barn specialist to dismantle the rest of the structure. And Jack Pease has agreed to help me with machine time, crane time to do these things because he's interested in seeing it safe, but it needs a lot of work. So it's about $200,000 that we have set aside to dismantle it and reassemble it. And then it's probably about another $1 million to turn it into a useful center. But we've all agreed on the Richardson families that, you know, this would be a worthy thing. So I want to officially pose landmark status on the Octagon barn, and if you want the other facilities, I don't know, they aren't very good shape. It's up to you whether you want to see those barns sit there, but it needs a huge amount of money cleaning up that site. I don't see that as worthwhile, but that's my 2 cents. I want the Octagon barn, I want to use it, preserve it. Fred Hatch's older brother, Miles, married my great-great-grandfather's daughter, Tina Richardson, way back in the days. So we've got a kind of a really neat historical tie-in with the Hatches and the vertical silo and everything. So yeah, I'm excited about getting that project and moving it to our farm. So.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Frank Wiley. Frank, I'm not going to get your last name right. I'm sorry.
Hello, everyone. I'll be frank with you today. As in Frank Woodcliff Drive in Brangle, Illinois. You recognize me probably from last month. We spoke about the spongy moths and the problems that we're having with that. I know several, probably 5 or 6 more neighbors showed up and they're in the audience today that also are representing the fact that we've got a problem in our 100-acre neighborhood with the leaves on all our oak trees and the hardwoods, shagbark, hickory, all those kind of trees. The spongy moths start appearing about early to mid-June. Based on caterpillar form, they climb up the tree, they eat the leaves, and after 2 to 3 years, those oaks are gone. They can't recover. They recover a little bit the first year. The problem with spongy moths, as what used to be known as gypsy moths, the caterpillars do the damage of eating, but then they repropagate. And they repropagate by starting at one end of our neighborhood, the 100 acres. And every year, they turn to moths, and they flit about, and they expand their territories. And that's what's happening in our neighborhood right now. So what we're trying to do is speak to you today again, and just remind you that this is not just oh, these neighbors are having leaf problems. You know, this is going to be something that it's only their concern. This concern spreads elsewhere. Mr. Vanderspool spoke to the fact that there's certain hot spots around. These hot spots are not going to just stay in one spot. They're going to keep creeping. And if we keep saying, well, it's just a small thing, I think you ought to really recognize the fact that this is going to become a county-wide problem. Somebody said, oh, it peaks. Well, it peaks, sure, but it peaks after they've done their damage. So I'm really hoping that you guys can get behind us and not just look at us as neighbors and people with trees. These trees are the county's trees, McHenry County's trees. These are oak trees. You're going to lose probably, let's say, 80% of that forest because of maybe potential inaction on your part because it's an economic thing for the county. This is really a conservation thing for everybody. So it's more than just think about it that way. I did bring my friends back, once again, from last month's meeting. I went and scraped off, this is from a 100-square-foot area on Mr. Muir's property. And I went up, got my ladder, scraped up what I could reach. And these are all egg masses. These are all going to turn into, in each little egg sac, I think there's probably at least 100 little dots that turn into caterpillars, that turn into gypsy moths, that turn into county-wide damage. So, once again, please help us. Just don't look at it as economic. This is a real thing for the county. I'll leave this here for you to enjoy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? I don't have any other names here. Hey, go ahead.
If I could for 1 minute?
Pardon? You can public speak, sure. If you want to step up there so you're on microphone, please, and introduce yourself. And you'd have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Jack Pease. On Main Street in Spring Grove, we'd love nothing more than to be cooperative and have a future use for the Octagon Barn. As the public, we're creating our own end use where the public could come and use it at Richardson Farms that gets thousands of visitors every year. I'm cooperative either way. I haven't been doing anything to demo the buildings yet, waiting to see what everyone wants. And I'm offering the power lifts and the crane and whatever they need to help, I'll send over for free, whether it's Mr. Richardson or if the county wants to do it or the Conservation District. I'm sitting on the sideline just waiting for you people to decide what you want to do with those buildings. But please have an open mind about Richardson's request because he does a wonderful job about attracting lots of public there that enjoy all his facilities. And if I kept it in its current condition for the next 30 years, I don't see how the public's going to benefit as much as they would had it been over by him. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Any other public speakers? Okay, please introduce yourself and limit to 3 minutes, please.
Yeah, hi, good morning. My name's Cindy Screwcrude. I live in Solon Mills, Illinois. I'm going to stay for the meeting, but I have a doctor's appointment, so I'm afraid that I might have to leave before you discuss the landmark designation for the Kattner farm. So really appreciate Mr. Peace being open to opportunities to protect this historic site. I think it's really important when we have, you know, this land that was being farmed, has been farmed for many years, and now it's changing, a new owner, and I think, as I hear, potentially the site where the farm buildings are that they may be available for purchase. I think we really need to think about what history means in our county. This is an amazing site, the site of the first silo in the United States. When I first learned that when I moved here, I was like, wow, that's just amazing that it happened right here in our own backyard. I think we need to remain open-minded about the Octagon Farm. I think the Octagon Barn, I think that's an important rare structure. The other two farms, the other two buildings on the site that the commission has also recommended for landmarking have interesting history too. One of the barns, the community came together and built that. I just wanted to say that I think we think about, I've been following what's going on with the update of the 2050 plan. I see a lot of discussion in there about agritourism, and we have some great agritourism going on in our area. The Richardson's Farm, the Stoddy Farm, Von Bergen's, Tatchek's. So this is a historic agricultural site. So I think we do want to remain open to thinking about what can we do with that site, with the barns that are on that site. So it's situated along Nippersink Creek. I think people come to McHenry County for three things, and I think we sometimes forget one of those. They certainly come for agriculture, agritourism, they come for our beautiful natural areas, but they also come for the history of McHenry County. So I look forward to your discussion about this landmarking.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anyone else? No further public comment? We'll move on to members' comments. Carolyn?
I was gonna just bring up, I know when we make a decision at the board level, it's done, and that's fine, but I wanted to just take the decision that we made on Shell House, and zoning that to, approving it to be an R1, as an opportunity for us to have a better discussion about zoning in general, and what the zoning ordinances are, why they're in place, how they fit into our long-range plans. I understand why the board ended up voting the way that it did. I think we made it was the wrong decision for the right reason is the way I kind of look at it. In other words, I think everybody felt comfortable with that particular 1 acre lot being for a house, so residential in that sense. But the fact that it was zoned R1 was not appropriate for that area, and I think it sets the wrong example for the future. I know the argument was that future boards would know it's a 12 acre parcel, as we know, and that the other, minus the 1 acre, the rest of it was really not buildable, a lot of wetlands in there. You know, having it be R1, that's the highest density zoning that we have. And nobody's gonna come in on that 12 acre and say, okay, we wanna put a subdivision in there. Which may be true, but down the line, we're not gonna be here when the decision is made in that part of the county about future development. It puts pressure to continue with an R1 zoning. I know the R1 zoning, we had it over here. So this is from the minutes. So the highest density zoning is R1, and the zoning board was unanimous in their denial of the petition because they felt to incorporate the one lot into an ag area of the highest density residential allowed was not appropriate and did not comply with the 2030 plan. And so my concern is, you know, sure future boards might know what we were trying to do, but we don't know when that will be, when that pressure to develop in that area will come. And as we move forward with our 2050 plan, and we are concerned about the preservation of ag land, we need to make sure that if we're going to go through the effort of putting together a land use framework, that we we try to follow it to the best of our ability. So perhaps what we could do is maybe have a little bit of training or some discussions about what these zones mean and why, and how these kind of
Okay.
decisions impact us.
As a future topic, we can put
Yes.
something together.
Yeah, something that we
a
can
little bit of
learn from
zoning
this
training.
process, yeah.
That sounds good. Joe, did you do a training on zoning before, or am I?
Actually, before I was on the board, they used to call me in to do that, but I haven't had that role since there, but.
Would you like that role?
We could certainly talk about it again. But along that same line, while we talk about that, we also need to talk about, do you want to roll back A2 to allow, A2's had a whole history of allowing and not allowing. This piece of property that we're talking about had, first off, it missed the 1979 break by 6 months. So it could have been, if it had been developed, if it had been broken off 6 months earlier than when it in fact was broken off, there would have been before us, it would have been allowed to have a house on it. It missed that, back in 1980 instead of 1979. The second thing that happened, I don't disagree that R1 doesn't belong there. If this had been 100 square foot more, literally in their zoning, in their subdivision plat, we could have made it an E1, which I think would have been a more appropriate designation. But because it was too small, we couldn't actually, as a board, move it up. Even though there was 12 acres there, we only zoned literally 100 feet less than an acre. It's 0.99. Right? So that was the second part. We couldn't do that. The third thing would have been in days if we'd had A2 that allowed, A2 used to allow property that couldn't be farmed, and you're not farming 99% of 1 acre. There's no product that you're going to make out of it. We used to allow that in an A2.
Okay, well, I'm going sorry to cut you off.
Yeah,
And I know, because we did talk about this, the decision's been made on that particular piece of property. But I do think for future topics, everything you're saying needs to be said in front of this committee for whatever reasons, along with some other information about why the zoning board denied the recommendation. And if we could get that as a future topic, Adam, on maybe next month's agenda, and spend a little time on it to make sure everybody's on the same page as to why this happened.
I just think you got to put both together. You can't just talk about R1. You got to talk about R1 and A2 and the rest of it.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, even right there, I don't even know what you're talking about.
See,
So you could put all that out there in front of me. Quite frankly, I was completely, even though I did research and tried to look at zoning and understand, and I came to the county board meeting, I really felt like I should have abstained because I didn't know what I was talking about.
So, well, we'll have it as a future topic, and then I'm going to get together with Mr. Godweiler and see if he would be interested in doing it at the committee level for starters, and then maybe sort of more of a synopsis at the committee level, and then see if we can put something together for the whole county board, if that's what the committee wants to do. Does that sound reasonable?
I'm happy with it.
Okay.
That'd be
Sound
great.
good, Lou?
Yeah.
Great. And any other members' comments? Okay.
Actually, I do have one. Spongy Moths. Do we actually have a program? We've been asked now for 2 months to put a program together. Is there any program? Because I'm not aware of one that the county
We
has.
had a program, and I'm going to have to rely on Scott for this, for a little background information. If you want to come up, Scott, and give us a little background information, as long as the conversations come up.
So are we going to be in that part of the presentation, or are we staying with?
Oh, do you want to talk after the presentation? Maybe that's the time to do it.
That's fine. I
Is
just
that okay?
That would be fine.
Yeah, let's do it then, Scott. That'd be better. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Jim. Okay, so we're going to move on to new business. And that's going to be the interview with John Macrito for the McHenry County Conservation District.
Is this the time?
John, do you want to come up, and what we got is a situation where typically we would have more than one person applying for this position.
I get that.
Pardon?
I understand that.
So I think there was some things that could have been done on our side that didn't get done as publishing in the paper, etc. So it's, I think it would be your option, whether you would like to interview today. I'm not going to encourage the committee to make a decision today because we didn't advertise this position properly, and I think we're all looking for maybe extra applicants.
I fully understand what you're saying.
So would you rather come back if there are other applicants in a month, or would you rather interview?
It honestly doesn't matter to me.
Okay, go ahead, Joe.
There is
If the
one
board
other-
prefer, I'll come back another time.
There is one other item that you should be aware of. Under the state statute, you're not allowed to hold any other political office.
Correct.
You're currently a trustee.
I am a
If we
McHenry
appointed
Township
you this-
trustee,
if-
correct.
If we appointed you to this position, you would have to resign as trustee.
I do understand that.
Okay.
Okay, so if you're comfortable doing that, and I don't know what the other committee members exactly want, we could, I presume we'd need a motion to table this interview until the next county board, or the next committee meeting, whatever date that is, I don't have it in my head. Is that something that, go ahead, Jim.
I would move to do that, if it's okay with him.
Right.
It's fine.
It seems
My
to be,
council is more qualified. I'm okay with that.
And seconded by Carolyn. Is there more conversation about that? I think I sort of said my feelings on it, and I know what,
Well, my only knee jerk is that it's not John's fault.
it absolutely is
It's on our
not.
schedule, it's, he's here to interview.
It is absolutely not John's
It's
fault.
your call, John, I'd support you if you want to do
I
I'm
it.
totally-
okay with it too.
Yeah.
I'm totally
You know,
fine with putting it off to another time. You might
Yeah.
come across someone who's more qualified than I am. I mean, honestly, I've got no education when it comes to conservation. I enjoy skiing, I enjoy being on the water. It doesn't necessarily make me the best candidate, so I don't have a problem with competition.
fair enough then.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with competition.
Well, there was some concerns from different ends on this, on our end, nothing to do with you, on our end, that we didn't handle it properly as far as publishing it, etc. So while it's somewhat unfair to you, it might also be unfair to some of the other people that would have wanted to apply.
And I totally agree with you.
So we're sort of caught in a,
Well, could I just?
yeah, go ahead, John.
How did John know about it then? If it wasn't
I don't
published?
know.
Online,
Online.
from all the listing
Pete, I
of
mean,
vacancies.
Do you agree with these statements that it wasn't done properly?
I-
I mean, it was online, I was talking to Pete, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Sure.
I don't know if there is a definition of proper. Clearly, we had the position open and available on the portal. We did announce it in the chairman's email at the beginning of last month that it was available. We did not do a press release. And that was the biggest
But it
thing. We
wasn't-
haven't always done a press release. A lot of times, it's this network of
Yeah.
people that are interested in these roles are kind of generating their own names.
Yeah.
That didn't happen this time. But we could absolutely do a press release in the next few days.
You would agree that it wasn't done improperly though, correct? I mean,
Yeah,
More,
I mean, you might want to change the way we do things, we can do it, but, to cut somebody off and say, I don't like the way we did it, when we've been doing it that way, it just, to me, it just rubs me a little wrong, that's all.
Carolyn?
So I understand what you're saying, because you don't want to be, it's not trying to lay blame. I think that, we had, upwards of 15 people last year. And we had.
It makes no difference.
No, I know, but last year we did do a press release. And I'm saying if we're not consistent from year to year, we don't know where what fell, what didn't work this time. And in the past, maybe we didn't do press releases, but more recently we have. And, so if we didn't do something and we suddenly only have one person, maybe the other organizations that normally bring people forward, just, if this is very early in the year, I mean, our PED meeting is literally the beginning of the month, when normally, it's been a wet spring, it doesn't even feel like the time is coming. So I understand what you're saying, and it's not a matter of laying blame. It's just like, if we aren't consistent, then we don't know why we're not getting what we're getting. So, and as long as Mr. Macrito is fine with that, I don't know.
Well, and that's, I wanted to
Larry?
give him, I wanted to give Mr. Macrito a chance to express his opinion on it, and then we'll work it
So,
out.
John, I apologize, my guffaw was about consistency. It's like doing the same thing all the time. If we're not going to do press, then we don't do press. But if we're gonna do online, then we do online. So, and it happens in organizations, right? So
in all fairness, you want to be consistent, don't stop something midway. Stop, you change it moving forward.
Well-
Don't stop a guy when he's here, it's published in our meetings for him to go forward. No, I don't like the way it's done. You're gonna make a change, make it moving forward. Don't go backwards on somebody. It's just
Well,
wrong.
yeah.
Agree or disagree, but the
Yeah.
move is wrong.
No, I wanted to just make, I
And
wasn't,
thank you for that,
I
and
wasn't.
respectfully, but
yeah.
you want to be consistent, move forward and go on and change the way we're doing it moving forward. Don't hit somebody on the,
Yeah,
on the
it's
way.
kind of a both and. I
Right?
do
Sure.
believe that we
I
have
might
a
agree with you
procedure.
moving forward, but not moving backwards.
You know, that's why we get to make these decisions.
Carl,
Yeah,
Carl,
absolutely.
Larry, with all the positions, is there a county policy, not only with us, but in other departments, because you have other, applicants applying for those? If it's in the newspaper, well, the newspaper is a dwindling, dying thing. They're not even published on Mondays. It's online. We're moving towards high tech. Would we not, in the future of some agenda, have, make a pecking order in how we advertise, positions open, and come up, like John says, a standard that we adhere to?
that seems reasonable. I don't know that there's any written policy at this time.
I don't think there's we appoint, I think, about 240 positions, and we don't do press releases for all.
Well,
Larry,
We have,
Go ahead, Jim.
after this discussion, I withdraw my motion.
Okay.
Can I make a point here, just real quick?
I don't know that I've ever had anybody withdraw their motion before, so I'm a little bit on procedure.
I'll make it instead.
Pardon?
I'll make it instead then.
Okay.
If the second
So
wants to
Mr.
start.
Kearns is withdrawing that motion, so I
I'll-
presume that the second doesn't have to agree with that.
Right. No, wait a minute, so you're saying you're gonna make the
I'll make the
motion?
motion if he won't make it.
Correct, so where's back where we are?
So Mr. Gardemoeller's making the motion that Mr. Kearns.
Now you need a second.
Sorry, Mr. McHenry.
I was-
Now you need
I
a
was the
second
second.
to it. And the reason I withdraw, just for that is I kind of agree with John, is we shouldn't change things in the middle of the stream.
Well, I think the problem is we sort of did, but
We changed things in the middle of the stream. We didn't do what we did normally, and that's why we don't have 15 people, and we
Right.
have one.
I'm okay.
We'll do it normally.
Well,
thank you very much for your patience on this.
Yeah.
I'm okay.
So the point I want to make, if I could, is just that there's also precedence for this. This is not like it hasn't happened before. It just happened with the Ethics Commission where they had one person come in. They weren't comfortable with just interviewing one person. And they asked that person as well, not if they would reapply, they wanted to open it up again. They got 3 or 4 more people, and that person came back and interviewed with them. So this is not unprecedented. It has happened before, where things just happen and you don't get the applicants. So, it's with all respect for the applicant who is here, and I think the idea was to interview now or to wait until the other applicants come. It's not giving him the opportunity. We're giving him the opportunity right now if he would like to interview. We're just saying we would like to open it up a little bit longer so that we can get the usual number of people that we get. This is highly, highly unusual.
And part of this falls on me. I've been out of town for 2 weeks. If I'd have realized there's one applicant, I'd have been asking why a week ago. And maybe we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now.
Just for the record, I do totally agree with where this is going. I thought there'd be a lot more than one applicant.
His vote counts a lot on this.
Yeah, right. And it'd be the right thing to do. It's,
Well, I
gotta
appreciate
pick more, hey, I might not be totally qualified, but I would love the opportunity. But at the same time, if there's someone else out there that would bring more to the board, so be it. It should be that way.
So, well, I certainly
I don't have a
appreciate,
problem, I didn't read it today.
certainly appreciate your understanding on that. So, if there's any other discussion on this, we'll go to vote. Joe?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
John?
No.
Jim?
No.
Lou?
Yes.
Carl?
No.
And I'll vote yes. So, where are we at?
4-3.
4 to 3?
Passes.
Thank you for your understanding. Please come back
Good luck,
next
I will
month.
be here next time.
Oh, we appreciate that.
Take care.
Thank you, John.
Sorry for the
It's all
confusion.
good.
Okay, so 5.2 is off the agenda for this month. We'll move on to our presentation. Nancy Johnson, Scott Shermer, are we here? All right, thank you. And sometimes we get carried away into our conversations after your presentation is over, so I want to say thank you from all of us right off the bat, so that doesn't get forgotten. We appreciate your time and efforts on this.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I feel like you were kind of sweeping us under the rug. There'd probably be a lot of questions after we present, so don't.
Well, I hope so. That's unfortunately something that we are not completely comfortable with dealing with.
No, and I guess as this is getting loaded up and ready to go, again, we appreciate the invite. Thank you to Scott for reaching out to us and some of your citizens as well. You know, I understand there was a presentation at the last meeting, and Nancy and I were kind of talking on the way up here that we kind of wish that we were here to hear what was said, but then also it's nice that we don't have that frame of reference and we can just present what we have here. So my name is Scott Shermer. I'm with the Illinois Department of Agriculture. I'm the state plant regulatory official out of our DeKalb office. And
I'm Nancy Johnson-Timmons, and I am the Spongy Moth project manager.
So we are here to basically present the state's perspective on this pest. And I think, again, not knowing the backstory knowing the backstory but not being here and hearing what was presented, you know, we try and come in with an unbiased perspective on it. You know, we deal with this pest in a situation where there's a program area, and we'll get into this, and what we want to cover today is what the program's about, and then what the management options are that you guys have at your fingertips to address this pest. So,
And we know the product in and out. I mean, I've been with the program 23 years. Scott, you've been, gosh, 15.
Not quite as long, 15. Yep.
15. So we've been working with the products that we use for treatments and monitoring and surveying this pest for a long time. I mean, this has been our passion for a long time. So I will manage this and move it here.
Thank you. So it probably doesn't come as much of a surprise. Lamantria dispar, formerly known as gypsy moth, currently known as spongy moth, is an invasive exotic species. So that's why we're really trying to battle this thing and knock it down. That's why it's a big issue. It was I almost said introduced back in like the 1860s. So it's been around for over a century, and it's probably the most well-researched invasive species in U.S. history, and it probably has the longest standing integrated pest management program in U.S. history and currently as well. And then as you can see down there toward the bottom, some of the other folks earlier mentioned that during the outbreak, caterpillars can be a nuisance to the public and also defoliate entire forests. So this is kind of a two-pronged monster in the sense that it does damage to plants, and then it also causes kind of a socioeconomic impact as well. Briefly, on the life cycle, we've got a lot of pictures here, so hopefully that helps illustrate
Scott, can I
things.
interrupt you for just
Yes,
a
sir.
second? Because we have a very interested audience in this. Can you guys see the screen okay, or do we need to shut the lights down or anything?
And can everybody hear me all right? I kind of wandered.
You're okay?
Quite a bit. Okay,
Okay,
cool.
good. Thank you. Sorry.
No problem. So life cycle, briefly, we talked about egg masses. We got a good example there. Again, that's going to be the life stage that they spend most of their lifetime. That's going to be the biggest issue when it comes to movement and regulations. This is the primary reason that these things spread. Caterpillar, the larva, that's going to be the damage-causing life stage. That's the eating machine that feeds on the leaves, and that's all they do. Pupa, really a short time frame there, matter of a couple of weeks, and then they emerge as adults, males and females, mate, and then the cycle starts over again. And Nancy, feel free to jump in anytime if I miss something.
Sure, thank you.
Again, we talked about the egg masses. Here's just some photos of some extreme situations. You got the female on the left laying her egg masses, and then multitude of females laying egg masses. Up in that upper right-hand corner, if you can see it, there's the dime there for frame of reference. But as those little caterpillars hatch, as we're expecting and anticipating here any day or any week at this point, They come out and they're really tiny, about the size of an eyelash, and that's when they're most vulnerable. That'll come into play later on. But the interesting thing is that each one of those egg masses you see can result in 500 to 1,000 larvae emerging. So that's how those numbers ramp up really quickly and becomes quite devastating. The caterpillars, again, same picture up in the upper right-hand corner, and then bottom left-hand side, you can actually see that a little better contrast on the leaf there. So they are very, very tiny, and that's when they are the most vulnerable. They will start, we're in the process of monitoring the hatch. Usually it's going to coincide with red buds blooming is kind of what we use as far as a phenology indicator. But we still run around and try and find egg masses and actually verify that on the ground. Yes, sir?
Vulnerable to.
I'm sorry?
Vulnerable?
Yep, vulnerable, yep.
To spraying? Or?
Yes.
We're gonna
yes.
use that.
Yeah, I'll get to that, yeah.
Yep.
And again,
timing
this
is critical.
this is going to go into kind of some of the information I understand you guys were presented earlier at the previous meeting.
We're just giving a background on it.
Yeah, and so they go through 5 instars. Each instar is kind of like a molt, and so they go from that small, tiny size all the way up to about 3 inches when they're basically monsters and look like good fish bait, but aren't.
And each caterpillar could eat, each one eats 6 square feet of leaf matter. So that's an enormous amount of leaf matter.
Yep. They really are. They're feeding machines. That's all they do. They're not
That's
reproducing or
unbelievable.
anything. All they do is eat to pupate and turn into adults to reproduce and create more. This is the other method that they really use to disperse ballooning. It's not something that's it's just kind of an interesting fact, but in areas where populations get too dense and there's a lot of competition, they'll drop these little strings or silks, and then they'll get kind of catapulted with the wind and get flipped around. And that's how they can relocate. It's not going to be to another state or anything, but it might be across town to a neighboring property, something like that. But really, the artificial transport of egg masses on firewood and things like that is the bigger issue.
Yeah, we have, one of the things that are really a concern is spread of gypsy moth or spongy moth, but the female moths don't fly. So at least we have some control and it won't spread as fast as any other pest or EAV. So we're lucky in that matter. So when we do treatments, it's very effective, because we don't have a constant movement. The females stay put.
Yeah, and that actually works in our favor because you don't have gravid females or pregnant females that can fly and lay their eggs elsewhere. Since they are immobile, they do have a tendency to stay put in that sense, which is actually a good management tool or characterization for us. But briefly on the caterpillars, as they get a little larger, they're very distinct with those red and blue dots, 5 toward the head, and 5 blue toward the head and 6 red toward the back. And then again, they can reach upwards of 3 inches when they're fully mature. Pupa, again, this is basically an inert life stage. It's just the larva switching to an adult. Again, it's a matter of 2 or 3 weeks. And usually these will be mixed in with a lot of egg masses, you'll see. Maybe they try and tuck these under bark or in crevices, so they may be a little cryptic in their locations, but pretty distinct. They almost they kind of look like coffee beans, or if you get a bunch of them on a tree, they get distinct, but they are well hidden. And then the adults. Again, the female moths don't fly. They're going to be large, robust, white. They don't fly because they're too heavy when they're laden with eggs. The male moths are the little brown ones, large feathery antenna in that bottom picture. I don't know if you can see the real camouflaged on the left photo, down toward the bottom. You can see the male in there, for comparison's sake, about half the size, maybe 2/3 the size of a female. Really identifiable with those chevrons or lightning bolt zigzag patterns on the wings. Some things that are often confused with spongy moth, and we see this quite frequently: the fall webworms and the tent caterpillars. I think spongy may be contributing to some of this in the future as well. Spongy moth, it was renamed because of the appearance of the egg masses. This is very spongy looking, light, fluffy material. With these webworms and caterpillars, you get the tenting, and hopefully that doesn't cause any confusions. But we do get a lot of calls thinking that these are spongy moths, and then of course the bagworms as well. So kind of shifting gears a little bit, why are we concerned about spongy moth infestations? And this was touched on earlier, but again, we mentioned that they spread easily. However, they can be controlled if there's an early detection and rapid response or early action taken. The caterpillars feed on over 250 types of plants, so there's a wide host range that gives them a lot of suitability in getting established. If they end up in a place where there aren't oaks, there's probably another set of plants that they can feed on and do well on. Defoliation of more than 2 years in a row can kill a tree. Defoliation combined with other factors in a single year can be fatal. So if a tree is aggressively defoliated and then drought comes into play, or there's other pests or other stressors that come into play, that could ultimately lead to that tree dying. And then additionally, as a non-native invasive species, there's no natural controls, there's no diseases around that take care of them, knock them out, or no effective native predators, so we don't see birds and parasitoids and things like that keeping their populations in check. And then this photo is actually out of Batavia, so it's pretty local. Nice big healthy, well, not big healthy tree. It was a big healthy tree until it got defoliated, and you can see that's midsummer. Everything in the background is full and green. This one's been picked over quite well. And Nancy, you have
Yeah, I worked on this project. This was down in the Park District in Batavia, and they had a bunch of beautiful oaks, and they all ended up looking like this with defoliation. And with the second stressor there being, it was near a busy road, pollution, mowing on the roots of the tree, because it was a park setting. All that together, the tree set out like a very small second set of leaves, and by the next year it was dead. So they had 3 beautiful trees in their park, and with the gypsy moth or spongy moth and the other stressors, it only took 1 year to kill this one off.
Yeah, usually with the timing, they'll be able to put out a second flush of leaves, but that really exhausts the tree. That's like running a marathon and then having to run another marathon right afterwards. So that's kind of the tipping point, is they use all their reserves to put out that second flush, and if they don't do all that here, it's kind of like Nancy mentioned, a tipping point. Another picture of almost a worst case scenario in Rockford. All the dead trees in the front, you can see all the healthy trees in the back, so these were absolutely ravaged by spongy moth. They in fact put cellophane around the trunks of the trees to try and do something. I'm not sure, not scientifically proven, but.
But this area, that area in Rockford, is another project I worked on. It was some egg masses that came in on a nursery shipment from an infested area. So this was back in the early 2000s, and this whole neighborhood, it looked like a bomb went off. This is the middle of the summer, and it looks like it was winter. You see the green in the back, so you know it is summer, and it was horrible. It was an entire neighborhood by this one nursery, just one set of stock, and we were able to treat it. The next year we treated it, and now the neighborhood's fine. We didn't lose any trees. That was one of our many success stories.
And so you mentioned 100 acres. This starts to scale up as you get these infestations, particularly in contiguous forested areas. Here's an example out of Pennsylvania where you can actually see the green foliage in the healthy, undisturbed area, and then the brown defoliated areas within that forest. And then if anyone likes to watch the show What on Earth, this is one of my favorite examples. It's going to be hard to see, but What on Earth takes satellite images and they try to figure out what's going on the ground. And this was actually an example they used, and I was like, I knew it before they told us what it is. But on the left-hand side, generally healthy. Again, this is probably not a good example. But,
this was Rhode Island. That was
yeah,
terrible.
Rhode Island. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You could actually see the feeding damage. The forest turned from green to like an orangey color where it was defoliated. So it was actually visible from space on a large scale. So we talked about general concerns for homeowners. We talked about this being a socioeconomic pest as well as a forest pest and a plant pest. And so property values are reduced. You have aesthetic damage. You go from having nice healthy trees on your property to bare trees, trees that are weakened, stressed, dying, shades reduced. Most people don't think about noise levels. Trees are good absorbers of noise and blocking noise. So you have heating and cooling bills that change, water issues. Homeowners become liable for falling limbs, tree removal costs, and replacement costs for those trees, on top of all the other sentimental values and benefits that trees provide on private property as well as public. Some worst case scenarios, in heavy infested areas, you do see these kind of aggregates This may be on a shed, a garage, side of a house, but you definitely do get this kind of ick factor. And then they also become somewhat of a human health issue as well. I've never seen this photo before on the left, but those are like little harpoons or hypodermic needles. They do shed their hairs, and those can become respiratory distressors. So especially for somebody that may have a compromised immune system, if there are a lot of these, they could potentially have some additional respiratory concerns. And then just the ick factor, you have thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of these up in trees. What goes in has to come out. They're up in the air. Gravity's law comes down onto your property. We've had multiple stories of people sitting on their deck drinking a cup of coffee in the morning, and then it's basically raining caterpillar poo on them. So this is probably the most unpleasant of the slides.
Right now, well, about 3 years ago, 2 state parks in Wisconsin, not too far north of us, had to close because of defoliation's ugly in itself, but the health concerns with the frass. And then last year I was working in Lamont. We're going to be spraying BTK down in Lamont in an area subdivision there. And last year when I went down, not only were the trees defoliated, nobody could use their yard, they had to close their pool. I had these poor people, they were shoveling up caterpillar poop and putting it in 5-gallon buckets. I have photos of that. And I had not seen it that bad. And just have them close their pools down, they couldn't even use their swimming pools. It was disgusting.
So shifting gears, talking about the kind of the worst case scenarios and why, we're going to go into kind of what you can do, and probably the reason that we were asked to be here for the most part. But when do you look at aerial applications? Really, truthfully, these are going to be the most efficient options for you. Stuff from the ground may seem better, but it's really not. What you're doing is you're treating the foliage. And so imagine trying to treat an 80-foot tree from the ground versus from above. Logic tells you that the aerial application is better. So again, you're looking to offset the potential ecological and financial threats to an area. So you want to get rid of this thing to take care of the trees, preserve property values, etc. Survey information indicates populations of spongy moth are growing. This may not be quite applicable here. Nancy can probably attest to this a little more. You guys are in an area where when we look at the program, we look at the transition from the known infested area to the non-infested area, and we're trying to slow that spread within that window. You guys are actually behind that in what we call the monitoring area. So we can certainly help and support in the detection and give you some measurables for determining a treatment, but again, what's been presented earlier is that the fact that there's life stages visible on trees is something that we use to validate our treatments.
If we go to an area, our traps, in the monitoring areas, the traps are spread out quite a bit. Sometimes 5-kilometer grid or an 8-kilometer grid, because we're just gathering information from behind our front, you might say. But I'm happy to give traps out, milk carton traps, to help you with your populations. But also sometimes we'll get areas like in Lamont, I didn't have any in our traps. Nothing was getting caught because they were spread out too far. But a homeowner called us, we verified that there were life stages. When you see those egg masses, there's no doubt you have spongy moth. So, those traps really aren't even needed when you have visual confirmation that there are spongy moths. And we can go up a municipality or county can come in and do the treatments.
Yeah. And then the third point, it's more efficient and cost effective to control it earlier than later. Again, you're going to be able to keep your acreages down, keep the treatment area down by getting it early before it spreads and it becomes a larger issue. And then I already touched on the ground treatments, rather ineffective and cost prohibitive. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one, but mating disruption, we have 2 different applications that we use. Mating disruption is for a large area that has low-level populations. We use this in a kind of a morbid fashion to prevent male moths from finding female moths and mating and creating more. So it's a way to kind of suppress or prevent them from mating and building up their populations. Again, it's for larger areas with lower level infestations, hence that little diagram on the left. You come in and spray, you knock out all those little hearts and they can't find each other and make more. Bottom line. This is actually done in conjunction with the Forest Service. Again, it's another organic product as well, so that helps us with the messaging. But it doesn't target, or it doesn't kill the target organism. It simply confuses them to the point that they can't find each other and make more.
Yeah, a trap has to have less than 50 in it for it to even be effective. We usually do, US Forest Service does the mating destruction treatments on areas that it's usually around 20 and 30 in a trap, our male moth counts in our traps. So in an area that has egg masses and confirmed populations, it's not effective.
So the other treatment application we use is BTK, which I believe you guys were presented last meeting. So going into this in a little more detail, it's very effective. BTK is very effective on low-level populations.
Well, I mean, it will wipe it out when you have a low level.
Yeah, okay. This is what we use,
Sure.
basically, this is like taking a bucket on a campfire. This is the approach we use for this, putting it out and killing everything in the area. So, again, we just mentioned that egg masses need to be present in an area so we know that we're spraying where the eggs are hatching and the larvae are coming out. We usually apply this twice. In normal circumstances, we'll apply it twice. The product only lasts about 5 days out in the environment before it breaks down due to UV and heat and that sort of degradation. So we'll make sure that we're applying it over about a 10 to 14 day span to make sure it's out there for about 2 weeks, targeting those first, second, and third instars. And going back to what we originally talked about, the dosage that we use is so small and so weak that it's only effective on those smallest life stages, so the first, second, and third instars. If we tried applying what we use to the large 3-inch caterpillars, it wouldn't kill them. So we're using a very low dosage. That's why timing is so important. We try and get it out there when they're hatching or right when they hatch, because if we're too late, it's ineffective. It's not enough. And it's applied to the canopy of the tree. So with this product, we typically use the helicopters. They fly over at a low altitude, usually 40, 50 feet above the tree, and then the actual prop wash of the helicopter pushes the product down through the canopy, so it's not just on the exterior. It actually works its way down into the entire canopy. So that's how you get full coverage, whereas the ground applications would just be spraying the underside of the leaves.
And that's another reason why timing is so critical. We look at 50% leaf development for our first application and 50% canopy coverage. So because we want the product to be pushed down to the lower levels.
We've had this slide up for a while. I'm not going to spend too much time on that upper right-hand side, but that's a little bit of the facts about the product or the bacteria itself. It's naturally occurring. It's been used since 1958 on insect pests as a safe and alternative way to produce fruits and vegetables. But that bottom left-hand side, I want to point out the mechanism. It's really cool. Science finds a way, or nature finds a way, and this is spectacular in my opinion. So the BTK is formulated with a bunch of other inert ingredients, food grade starches and stuff to have it stick to the leaves. As the caterpillar ingests it, caterpillars have alkaline digestive systems, and that's what activates the toxin. Birds, reptiles, mammals, we all have acidic digestive systems. So the product basically, if ingested, if you were out munching on oak leaves for some reason, it would pass through your system like a piece of bubble gum. So the fact that it's only activated in the alkaline digestive system helps, but also the fact that it's only effective on Lepidopteran larvae, like we were talking about, moths and caterpillars. You're not going to have any concerns about bees. You're not going to have any concerns about adult moths, caterpillars, other pollinators along those lines, or I'm sorry, moths and butterflies, excuse me.
It's also rated OMRI certified organic. This is what you're using when you buy organic groceries. They have to do something to keep the caterpillars from eating the produce. So your organic products in your grocery store use BT. If you have certified organic gardeners in an area, they keep their certified rating. So that's always been a concern, like, it's pesticide. Well, it's a pesticide, but it's organic.
And then just kind of wrapping up, I mentioned this earlier, with the national program, Slow the Spread. Again, this isn't an eradication program. This bug could have been eradicated decades ago with DDT, if DDT stayed around, but they transitioned to more safe and responsible products. Obviously DDT with the bioaccumulation issues and things like that, we don't see that with these organic products and these products that degrade in a matter of 5-6 days out in the environment. But again, that purple strip is really where we focus our slow the spread efforts, trying to stop that bug from advancing further west and south, getting into the really oak-heavy areas of like Missouri, Arkansas, and the Ozarks. And a brief success story here. If you can see this on the left-hand side, you see that you might not be able to read the catches, I can't from here, but there's two red catches kind of in the middle.
Red's bad.
Red's bad. And so we caught those back in what was that, 2014. And we said, we don't know what's going on, we'll take a look. And next year, those 2 red spots blew up into a dozen, or more than a dozen red spots in the immediate Stark Rock area.
The catches are high. When we talk about our catches, what our program does, we have about 6,000 green traps you'll see spread on a grid system on the northern part of Illinois. The 2/3 southern part is handled by USDA, but Scott and I, with the slow spread program, we have a monitoring program, and it's pheromone baited traps. It only attracts, it has a little string in there with female hormone or pheromone, and since only the males fly, we get trapped. We get catches in our traps, and we're able to determine areas that have infestations.
And so this was a little bit of a tricky one, because that area, there's a lot of traps over, or a lot of high catches over a large area. So we thought in that upper left-hand slide, maybe we could do mating disruption and get it taken care of. Again, mating disruption is for a large area but low levels of infestation. So this typically didn't fit the bill, but it would have been BT based on numbers, mating disruption based on area. So we went with mating disruption. The trap catches resulted in basically a trap fail, as you can see on that right-hand side. So we were not able to knock this one down with mating disruption in 2016. So we came back with BTK the following year, 2017, sprayed it, and there's the map of catches in 2022. So 5 years later, after doing that BT application, I think we've caught 1 male moth down in that immediate area over 5 years.
Which you could have just blown in.
So yeah, getting the timing right and getting everything right, it's definitely very effective. Here's another example. A couple years ago, Morton Arboretum called us up, said they had some issues. We put some traps out. All those red spots on the left-hand map were heavily infested traps. We ended up spraying, doing a BT treatment. Was it that year?
2020.
Yeah, 20. Yeah, and yeah, there's that treatment block overlaying Morton Arboretum, and 2022 haven't caught a thing in there. So again, when you get in there early and you get in there even late in that situation with Stark Rock, you can get it taken care of, and particularly with the BT, if the timing is done right between the leaf development and the larval development, it's very, very effective.
Did you see my last slide?
Last slide?
I did it. I think I changed my last slide.
Oh.
So you can put it back where it kind of
So that's it. I know it was a lot of information. We probably maybe went a little long, but
Sorry about that.
trying to
No, that's
do as
okay.
much
Very
as we can
interesting.
to help you out with your decision making. So
We're so passionate about it, so it's like, we get excited.
Back to your last
But
slide.
I have,
So let's just, okay, Jim, Jim started, so did you have something?
No, they kind of answered my questions as I got on this. It was a very good presentation, thank you very much. And, but your state spraying, I think I caught that in there, that we're past the stage where you would spray these areas.
Yeah, and so when you're in an area that's past the slow spread program, which is our cooperative agreement with our cooperative program, we guide and can assist with our contractor. We have a contractor that is working with us for the next 6 years, or 3 years and 3 years. And so they do a lot of private municipality programs. Last year, Park Ridge, was it last year, Park Ridge, or 2 years ago, Park Ridge contracted our Hendrickson's Flying Service. Different homeowners of subdivisions contract, they get the neighbors together and they kind of chart out an area that's infested. So our contractor is really good about going through all the processes, working with municipalities, getting everything ready for the treatment. So then they time it with our treatment so they know that we're spot on.
Is there a possible program where BTK, I don't know the expense of that chemical, is there a possible program where the state could provide those chemicals?
No, it's handled through, you'd have to work with the contractor direct. But you get tagged on with our order, so when, like, the shipment is, right now we're staging for our BTK spray, either the end of next week or most likely the 16th in the areas that we have BTK. The product, there are a few private owners throughout. I know East Dundee is spraying on their own, and a few private homeowner groups that are spraying, and so they get the benefit of purchasing the product with us. So, because it comes up, it's fermented, it's made of corn and sugar, and so you get that benefit, but we don't supply it.
And the spray, when they apply that, does that basically kill every other pest in those life stages? In other words, they're not pests, they're butterflies or
It depends on what's eating, that's why the stages, our timing is so critical, because one, we're only spraying over canopy and you
Yeah.
can go on.
Yeah, so we treat the canopy, right? So that's what we need this product to be ingested for the target pests. So we're not going to be spraying open fields. We're not going to be spraying over rivers. So you can't do that legally. You know, even parking lots, they can turn off, turn on. So the neat thing about the technology these days is that they basically, like, you get in your car and you have GPS and you have a map. They do too in the plane. But we can actually they will get up in the airplane and they'll have these, like a map like that with that spray block in it, so they know when to turn on, turn off. It actually has a green light to turn on, a red light to turn off. So it's very, very precise in that sense. But I totally forgot what your original question was, sorry. I'm getting excited about that, yeah. So the product isn't applied to areas where there isn't canopy where the spongy moth would be feeding. So if there is crossover in that sense, then yes, it is potentially and likely fatal to other lepidopteran moths, butterflies.
So I think you answered my question. The cost on this, for, say, these homeowners wanted to band together, what is the approximate cost, and is it too late for them to tag on to your cost?
Okay, we don't know the cost, we kind of stay out of that.
I'm saying approximate.
We don't know.
For the chemical itself?
No, that's separate, you pay per acre on this. And you'd have to contact because we stay out of the buying process.
Yeah, we do thousands of acres, so our price is going to be better than if, you know, somebody in
Yeah.
McHenry County wanted to do 200 acres.
Yeah,
You might be looking, but in all honesty, per acre, if I had to fathom what you'd be paying, it would probably be somewhere in the $100 to $150 range, which is probably less than what a single ground application would be for a single residence.
I had a farm up in Freeport 2 years ago that I just had 4 trees up in that Freeport farm, infested, covered. But they were giant, gorgeous old family oaks. So I went and got a bid out for somebody to just do a ground treatment on it, and he was $800 per tree. We just made a little polygon of 4 acres around it, and our helicopters sprayed back and forth the little 4 acres for very little.
$200.
$200, yeah. We can tell what our
So
numbers are.
there's strength in number when it comes to these applications. Yeah.
So, and that's, I mean, one farm
There's
we
also-
did for $200.
Yeah, there's also that was a weird outlier. I mean, there's probably a minimal threshold that they would do something, you know, it has to be worth their time to come out and do, you know, probably 50 acres or something like that, just to do it.
And that's something you might want to talk, we use Hendrickson's Flying Service. They're very responsible. They've actually been with us for 30 years. And,
Are they in this area then?
yeah.
Rochelle.
Rochelle. And then one other point though, when, you know, we talk about, you ask if it kills any other Lepidoptera in that area. I can recite a different study for you guys. I sent a link to Scott. When a species of caterpillar might be eliminated in an area, a small area, this is why we target such small areas, they find the spongy moths are gone because they're not native. They've been eliminated in that area. And the native species move right back in. So, and I can cite that research project with U.S. Forest Service at Virginia Tech.
Yeah, that kind of answered my question. What, with the existing ecosystem under the tree, does it float? No, okay, great.
No,
I mean, if you look at this as a perfect example here, you have that Morton Arboretum as a specific defined area, right? We spray that, we knock out that population of spongy moths in there, and then that population is going to have to build up kind of on its own, either artificially introduced or not. Anything that would have been eliminated in that treatment block would be able to come in, that's native, would be able to come in from 360 degrees and repopulate. So generally speaking, what we see is if there is some collateral damage, and I'll use that term, that those natives move back in within a year or two.
And do the spongy moths, the infestation, do they eat all of the stuff that in some ways could challenge the other species? I don't know, I mean, like, can they overtake a space and then butterflies can't?
I wish more people asked that question, because that's why we do this, right? We're trying to basically prevent that immediate ecosystem from being decimated.
Okay.
So you think about all the other species that rely on oak. If spongy moth were left to its own devices, it would wipe those trees out. Those trees wouldn't, they wouldn't be able to produce acorns. They wouldn't produce shade. The entire ecosystem would be
Collapse.
basically blasted and collapsed. So even with a little bit of, I mean, there aren't a lot of forest lepidopteran that overlap with spongy moth, especially this early in the year. So it's very fortunate for us, again, like I said, biology, nature sometimes gives us really good tools to work with, and that's one of the advantages here is that there is not a lot of overlap with native lepidopteran in the
But
forest
they
area
do
with this.
decimate ecosystems.
No, it does, well.
No, I mean,
just
Yes,
spongy moth, absolutely.
yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have pictures of, especially Pennsylvania, where they have so much old growth oak. You'll have whole areas and you walk through it and it's silent because everything's gone. The bugs are gone, the birds are gone, the mammals are gone. This area was super important to us, even though it was close to the monitoring area and kind of the back edge of our kind of slow the spread program. This was very important because this park has a ton of oaks. And then also it's very beneficial for the community. I mean, this is where we do research on trees and pest, tree diseases. Also, it's an enjoyment for the neighborhood and the community in Chicagoland. And if the spongy moth took off in that area, we just end up with a big prairie and a path through a prairie. And so that's why we monitor this area a lot. We give them traps.
Thank you.
And then one last thing along those lines, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I mean, we don't think about it much out here. It's a bigger issue out west, but when you have stands of dead, dying trees, it's fire. We see that a lot with the Rocky Mountains and the pine issues they're having there, but I mean, it's certainly a real issue here as well when you got lots of dead standing trees and a lightning strike, and it becomes a fire issue as well as just dead trees standing and the hazards associated with that. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It seems to me you're sort of contradicting what we heard last month on some of the topics as far as how it affects other species, et cetera.
Yeah, but that's why we love this product because bees are so important to us, and I mean it has no effect on bees. They don't even not even on the radar. The organic farmers are happy with us. I'm very serious about my product. I'm a cancer survivor, and I take pesticides super serious.
And the other thing is, do you do any monitoring in McHenry County? Or?
So I was just going to get to that.
Because it's like, how do we find these places?
You guys are in an area we call the monitoring area, which we just have. We have our traps are set at large spacing. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you can see you're in a monitoring area. So in the area that we do the action area, our traps are set at 1 kilometer and 2 kilometer grids. So they're very dense. But in your area, since it's just kind of back information for the decision algorithm, your traps are set at 5 and 6 kilometers, the grid. So there's a lot of gaps in there. And so for homeowners and municipalities, we have traps that we offer for free. Big milk carton traps, I can come show you how to put them together. We provide them to you for free as long as you share your data with us. So as long as you share, we share.
And the timing on that for this year?
You'll put the traps up. You just have to have the traps up by June 20th, before the moth goes into flight.
Okay.
And then, so I can get traps up. I can come up and work with you guys and put it in areas. That way you'll have data kind of to, make your own maps, kind of work with your GIS people maybe, or, your homeowners. And that way you can have some background data. I mean, you already have egg masses, so you know that you have it, but.
Are we late for spraying this year?
Yeah, I think you're late because you have to file you have to file with the EchoCat system with DNR, which is their tool online.
But if we had the traps and we found our trouble areas and go through the process and make sure we have something in line for next year. And then
if I had
all our ducks in a row, so next year when the timing hits, we hit it right.
Yeah, see, here's the thing too. I mean, there's obviously life stages on trees. There's visible damage, but you don't necessarily know the extent of it. With these treatment blocks, we do kind of build in a little bit of a layer of protection to make sure we're getting everything, right? So the traps will kind of give you an idea. We call it delimiting, where you basically, you have a problem here, you want to go out and find out how big of a problem it is. So instead of treating 100 acres and just getting a piece of it, you're getting everything.
Yeah, a good example was Oswego, when the Brent called us down in Oswego. It was between our regular, because it was a large trapping grid, so there was a lot of space in between. Homeowner called us, and then Scott and I went, we set traps. What did we do? Like every block, we just kept putting traps out?
Like it,
yeah, it felt like it. So we knew where ground zero was, where this infestation was, and then Scott and I looked at a map and we kind of just set traps, like every block, kind of moving from the epicenter and moved our way out. So then the next year we knew we didn't have to spray all of Oswego. We just had to spray where our trap counts, and when they were like 0 or very, very low, we knew that's our perimeter, that was our delimiting area. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
certainly it does, yeah.
Nancy, I have the maps that you provided for McHenry County. I wonder if you could just walk through our population over the past several years and kind of talk about how it's ebbs and flows we had talked about.
Okay.
So, Dan,
Okay,
did you
so
get
sorry,
that?
were you, I'm like, oh, we don't need the maps.
Well, I think it'd be important for them just to see here at home what we're seeing, what you're seeing as far as that
You
population
can kind of see
change.
the spacing too of the traps, what I'm talking about, so that's what it
And again, while we're transitioning, if you think back to that last slide that was up, you guys would fall into the suppression area. Unfortunately, you're right on the edge of that suppression area. So suppression is basically where private landowners, land managers, municipalities, even if there's like a DNR program or something, or potentially even some other land managers do the applications on their own to suppress those populations in the localized area. So as you get from suppression, which is basically state and local working on it, to slow the spread, which is state and federal, to the eradication area, which is federal. You guys are right on that edge.
So
Unfortunately, right on the edge
if
of
we were in the
suppression.
worst area, you guys would step in and pay for the spraying?
Potentially.
Or the federal government would? or
Potentially.
Yeah, in the action area. So this kind of shows the color, and so I grabbed some trap counts from 2014 all the way to present day. So, you know, Scott and I could talk about being generally infested, and you're under quarantine since 2007. McHenry County has been under quarantine, which means nursery stock has to be inspected. If you moved, you had to check your equipment, your patio furniture. So I'll just kind of try to see if I can open each of these. So this is just kind of showing you the green. You see that little green area at the bottom? That's to show up sort of, yeah, on the lower left. That is the action area. So you know, you're kind of, your area, your county kind of straddles the monitoring areas. The monitoring would be the yellow and that tan color. And then you can see these are the counts from 2014.
What is that little red cluster?
That's an infestation down there. And you know, on any of these maps, like I'm showing you these maps, they're all open data for the public to see. So if there's anybody who's curious about it, Scott and I are always willing to help you. Like take a peek if you're curious about your municipality or your community. You can go in. It's taxpayer money.
So who did this map or monitoring here?
This is the map, the trapping I did in 2014. So each of those areas, see how far spread out up in your area the traps are? So each of these little dots, either the white circle is a 0 catch, so you can see just east of or west of Harvard it was 0 catches. Down by Woodstock we had 85 in a trap. But you can see our traps are spread out more because we're not collecting data to do treatment. We're just trying to collect information for the decision algorithm, which is how we choose to do treatments, or it's called at Virginia Tech, we put in all this data. It looks at all 13 states. There's many states in this program. It's just not Illinois. And it decides, it's called potential problem areas. It kind of shows us
So now that we know we have a potential problem area, would this be something that you would monitor more thoroughly?
How would you explain this?
This isn't necessarily, I'm going to say raw data in the sense that these are trap catches, this is what the traps caught, but it's also geospatially related. So because it's further back, this little portion right here where all the traps are denser, that is the action area. That's why those traps are denser. So there is a portion of McHenry County that would be in that action area. The problem is that it's further back toward the monitoring area, so it's assigned a lower priority because it's further away from that leading edge. So the truth is, the reality is that there may be a situation where there's nothing else going on out here and we can come in and spray that little spot, but generally speaking, because it's further back from the advanced front, it's assigned a lesser priority.
Our program, Slow the Spread, is very different than an eradication program, which means you would get rid of, like, let's say you had a park here within Woodstock that was infested with spongy moth, and then you came in and sprayed it, that would be eradicating it in that area. We're looking at a greater program. We're looking at 13 states, and we're looking at the infestation along from North Carolina all the way to Minnesota.
So we're probably not going to get specific help from your program.
You have
Not
never,
likely, but it is possible under certain situations.
How do we work towards that?
well, I'm gonna say, we have never, I've been with the program 23 years, and your area has been in the monitoring zone all 23 years.
Okay, but I'm looking at data from 2014.
Right, I'm gonna show you, we're gonna keep going, but.
Oh, okay.
But I'm showing you how, I'm showing a history of how it's been invested.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there, so just how. So, hold on, I don't know, I can't see the titles on these. Okay, there we go, and then here's to count in 2015, you'll see that we had a down by south of Carpentersville, or is that Carpentersville? Yeah, we had, an infestation down there. Once again, it's behind, it's in the monitoring area. So you can see that, and this area moves forward, backwards and forwards throughout our catches. It's not a fixed area. So when we have trap catches of the 5,000 traps, remember this, we're just one state of 13 different states that are doing this program. The lines move east and west. Our goal, the slow spread program, is to keep the spongy moth from infesting west. So a natural spread would be 20 to 30 kilometers per year. We keep it at 2 to 3 kilometers. I've been here 23 years and we're still in Chicagoland, which is, thank goodness. So that's your count in 2015. Here we go, 2016. So you can see once again that we still have high numbers. In 2016 in McHenry County. 2017, the numbers are a little bit lower. Remember, once again, this is, like Scott said, geospatial. There might be infestations between these traps because these traps are spread so far apart. This is, once again, just data we're collecting for the other program. This is where I come in with giving you guys traps to monitor this year. Like DuPage County Forest Preserve, they get probably 100 traps from me each year. Park Ridge, Oak Park, I supply each of these municipalities with traps to put in throughout the community. Okay.
So I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
The earliest stage, Huntley had a lot of clusters of infestations and traps there. And I think it was 2014.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But then in the future years that you move forward, you didn't have infestations there, but you didn't have traps there either, right? And you look at, there's no white circles.
2014. See, it's in the monitoring area. We're working in the action area. This is just, so hold on, I don't pay.
So
You have-
15, and there's
Yeah,
no
so-
white
well,
circles there, so
right,
there's no
so-
traps, so they may have been still infested then,
Well,
right?
the
Right,
blue,
okay,
the
so
blue
look at
two
the,
is,
see, look how the density of the trapping, yeah, so at that point, we had a densing trapping grid,
Mhm.
okay, so
But there
then,
was no treatment at that time?
no, there's no treatments in those areas,
What's the blue?
because it's in
I
the
assume-
monitoring area, we have not treated in that area.
And
So
that's
then
it.
you see, there's like no traps around there, so Huntley might have given us, wanted traps in that year, and then we supplied the municipality with traps, they monitored.
but the blue numbers are traps too, correct?
Correct.
They're
And
just-
those little
they're-
white dots are the white dots
They're
are
just-
zero catches.
Right, not,
So they're
not
traps.
danger areas.
No, there's no danger.
So there is a trap by Huntley, but not as many as there was.
Yeah, so they might have had caught something, but that was something, we don't do any treatments in the monitoring area. Municipalities might, but that is a separate entity in itself. We don't monitor that, we don't track those catches, we don't track what they do.
Do you have any current data to bring us up to date that's
I'm
not 7
working
years
on it.
old?
I'm working on it. So we're gonna get you, okay, so 18, I have all the way up to last year. I'll get you right there. So there's, sorry, it's hard to see in the tabs here. 17, 18, we'll go to 2021 since you're on. Here's 2021. There's 280 there in Woodstock.
Yeah. What
See how-
does that mean?
There were 280 male moths in a trap. So it doesn't count the females, since the males are the only ones that fly. And that's just a representation in that area. There could be, we found with these traps being so spread apart, that there could be, a home within that, and a male moth is gonna go to a real female over our fake female. Put it that way.
And the pheromone that's used in the traps to attract the males to the trap is the same pheromone that's used in the mating
Okay.
disruption product.
Yes. So this one, I'm showing you treatments in 2022. You can see over on the left, That's in the green area, that is called our action area. That's where the funding is put from the U.S. Forest Service, this leading edge. And you'll see that right in Rockford area, we did a treatment in 2022. And I think I have one last slide so we can show you 2022. I made too large titles, sorry about this guys, so my titles aren't showing up.
So the people that have come to us today, is that right around the Marengo? Is that the area, Scott?
One was Marengo, Lou, and one was Bull Valley. It was just north,
Oh, they're right there.
excuse me if I'm wrong, Frank, but just northeast of Marengo a little bit, the subdivision is.
Exactly, about 2.5 miles northeast.
Yeah, where the
Okay.
19, well, probably about
Yep,
where the 19 is there?
yep,
Yeah,
up above your dot,
Okay.
right around there.
okay.
So you still have very high numbers in this area, even though the traps are spread out, you still have very high numbers. We also put traps at nurseries and garden centers as well, just to help monitor these areas, since you have a lot of nursery centers and gardens. So here you go, this was the count just for last year.
And as Nancy mentioned, we're putting out an artificial lure that's very effective, but it's still not as effective as a real female moth. So if you have areas where there's a heavy infestation, these traps could catch a single moth flying a quarter of a mile, maybe even up to upwards of half a mile if they're out in the open and there's no background noise or competition. But if there's a bunch of them having a party and there's all kinds of pheromone in that area and males and females all over, it's going to be hard to pull those out to a trap away from that. So these traps are just where we caught moths, but in between there might be a lot heavier infestation that these traps didn't pull those moths out of to detect from.
And that's why we love giving traps to homeowners and municipalities, because it catches those areas for you guys to do future treatments. I mean, the male moths are quite lazy. They don't want to, if there's a bunch of females right here, they're not going to go into our, a trap. They're going to stay put.
But once again, just to make sure I'm clear on it, if we had these traps out, you would put the information together and make a map that we could use? Or?
Yep, so that's part of the deal, is that if you put out the traps, we'll come mark the areas, or use coordinates, or you can give me the address, and it will be put on our database, and I can help you create maps, and that's what the data sharing is really good for.
Okay.
I supply traps, you give me data, and we have a good deal.
So if you were going to recommend to the folks that are here what the next step is, what would it be for them?
Oh, my recommendation is to work with Nancy and do some cooperative trapping. Yeah, get a better resolution.
And not
because
spray this year?
Well, it's too late.
It's too late, but also, I mean, aside from the infestation where we know there's the life stages and egg masses where these came from, like, you're really not sure where. I mean, I'm just going to make a really bad example here, but just to kind of put it in perspective, like, everything that's going on right around here could be a result of something right there.
Yeah.
There could be if we put a trap there, we may catch 1,000. But because there wasn't a trap there, we don't know that that's the epicenter. So that's why we come in with a little better details on it. And that's what we need is a resolution to find out where that treatment epicenter would be.
A question, your red numbers are the amount that you caught in a trap?
Correct.
So based off your numbers, Marengo and Woodstock are nothing compared to the devastation that I'm seeing up in the chain of lake. When I'm seeing 500, 650, 12.
That just happens to be the trap is at a location where, like, that 650, we were called to put a trap up there.
That looks like a hot zone compared to the rest.
Well, once again, it's just, there could be these traps are just a grid. This is not trapping to do treatment. Okay, that maybe we can explain. There's trapping to do treatments, future treatments. There's trapping just to give data to our computer.
Okay.
This is just trapping to give data to our computer. We don't do any treatments based on this. All the information from all this trap is put into a computer at Virginia Tech. And a decision algorithm that looks at all the states together as one unit. Not just not just McHenry County, not just Illinois, but the whole entire program, to make decisions on treatments. So this information here is just background noise, just for us to have information. It's not to base treatment off of. It's just for
our program. Yeah.
So when we give you guys traps for your program, for your future program, you could put it, like, I think you have an infestation at your house. So we'd like start at your house, and then we could work on a map, and we'd put it like, let's put a block on each direction away. We'll just keep working our way out, or 2 blocks. And that way, you could know, maybe it's just like a rectangle shape of infestation, starting from your home, going, a direction. You really want to target this. It's not a blanket. We don't do like all of Woodstock. We would do just a part, or not we would, but you would do. Does that make better sense?
How many traps would it take to make a proper grid for, just say, a 2 square mile area in Marengo or Little Valley? I don't want to count anybody out here, but.
We just put, you start with where the infestation is, and
Every
if
quarter
you want to
mile.
go every 3 blocks, if you want to do every 200, our grids usually are 250 because we're all metric. Our intensive grid on us is 250 meter grids. So 250 meters or 500 meters is what we go by on our grid system. But when we have a definite infestation, like Lamont is a good example. Our traps in Lamont didn't pick up anything because the infestation was right in the center. So a homeowner called me. We went and looked at the infestation. That's where the pools were full of caterpillar poop. And then I started going out and I did 3 blocks. And I personally went out and set traps. I started at the center and did 3 blocks in each direction. And we found that it was limited to pretty much just a 4-block area on each from each direction. When I got to my trap at 6 blocks away, the trap catches were 0. So, and I'll work with you. I mean, I have to look at each situation. I'm here. Scott and I are here to help you guys in any way. So this is not just your last talking with us. We're here for you. And
We certainly appreciate that. Carolyn, go ahead.
No, he was going to.
I was going to say, I don't think it's your job to survey the entire county either. What you guys should be looking at are residents that say, hey, we got a problem here. And then, you guys don't go out and find the problem, right? You respond to the problem that's brought to you by residents or concerned citizens, right? There may be an infestation in Harvard that nobody reports. How are you supposed to know about that? You're supposed to know you're supposed to go put up traps up there? Who knows? But in a situation where somebody responds, then you can, or somebody brings the issue to the forefront, then you say, okay, well, Nancy, we need 25 traps to delimit around this subdivision in Woodstock. And so some years you may have 100 traps out, some years you may have 30 traps, some years you may have 10. But I don't think it's your job to go out and find those infestations to ultimately figure out a way to treat them. Be more responsive. I hate to say it, but don't be proactive. Be more responsive when it comes to these reports, because like Nancy said, a lot of our situations come from reports from the public as well. So
yeah, I had a really nice homeowners group, Shadowlands, I think it was, by Bull Valley, and they had a really bad infestation one year. With no defoliating, but they had egg masses. So for 2 years, I worked with the homeowners and we trapped, and it died out on its own. We're going to put some more traps up there. One of the homeowners there said she's going to kind of spearhead the project, and we're going to put traps around. And we went out together. I showed them how to assemble the traps. They gave me addresses. Same thing with a woman named Linda Painter down in DuPage County. She kind of spearheaded her subdivision and found out there was an infestation. Her and I kind of worked together, mapping out. It's these active homeowners that are awesome with us. And she mapped out, I think, what was it, about 40 acres, Linda did? Would it be that big? And 30, 40 acres. She mapped out on her own and worked with our contractor on her own. But I went down and I did a presentation over the winter to her homeowners group. I mean, that's what we're available for, is to help speak, with homeowner groups.
That's great.
And she, I spoke to her homeowners group, and she tagged her spray program with our state spray program. And I mean, even though DuPage County is also generally infested, their neighborhood, she saved her neighborhood because it was a lot of old growth trees.
Good,
I do
Carolyn.
want to kind of, a lot of information has come through, and very quickly too, so.
I'm sorry that we were like dominating your meeting.
No, I mean,
it's
this
great.
is all good information, but I think we just kind of, just slowing down just a second. I mean, in terms of like the traps, I mean, to your point, this is a little deceiving in that we don't know that there isn't an infestation somewhere else. It just depends on if the trap is there, right? So.
But also, it also shows that there are walls here, so it's a good start. That's what it is.
No, I'm not criticizing the map. I'm saying that it can be misleading in terms of where we think you have these numbers up there, but that doesn't mean they're not down here. It just depends on whether or not you have a trap there that lets you know that, which gets to your point about the trap being very important.
Yeah.
We did have a presentation before. I do think that these are really complicated issues because we have the same thing with just trees in our yard where do you treat or do you not treat? I mean, because if you do this, it's gonna hurt something, but you're gonna lose the tree, you lose the value that that tree brings, and so on. So I don't, yes, the native populations can move into these areas once, once the spongy moth is gone and is no longer taking over those areas. We also have to recognize, and I'm not saying that, don't spray or whatever, sometimes it's a compromise, right? But if you have populations that are already threatened or already having trouble as it is, and you wipe out big areas of them, it becomes harder and harder for them to come back in and repopulate. I mean, I think we just need to be very clear about that. It's not like, oh, they'll come back. I mean, at some point, we put them on the brink as well, okay?
And
go ahead.
I was just going to say, and Nancy mentioned that EcoCat system. So when you consult with DNR, you say, this is where we want to spray for spongy moth. They look at it and they say, well, you can't because there's X, Y, and Z in there that product may harm.
They've turned us down.
They've told us
Okay.
you can't spray that, so
Yeah.
there is that layer of security.
And that's true of a private person going in and trying to spray it.
They have, no, the contractor has to follow, you have to follow the same guidelines. You
Okay.
can't, same with them, when they're doing aerial applications, they follow the same congested airspace permission, and they follow with the DNR because they're going to be doing aerial applications. So there's a lot of paperwork that goes involved with this.
All right, so we know that if there's kind of like similar, like caterpillars and those kinds of things, they will be impacted. They will, depending on what, if they're below that 3-inch mark, they're as likely to be wiped
If
out
they're
as well.
feeding at that time.
Yes, I understand that. I'm just trying to
Yep.
get some clarification. So, but, and I know that that's because of their alkaline and where acidic birds are. So what happens if a bird eats something like that, migratory birds? There's no impact on birds?
0.
Even if they eat a,
Yeah.
okay.
The problem, that's the problem though, nobody eats the gypsy moths.
They don't feed on them.
Because they didn't involve with our species of birds here.
Well, I guess the other issue for that is not just if they eat it, that's true too. But I mean, the other problem is you wipe out the population of beneficial bugs that they do eat.
We don't wipe out any other bug.
The other caterpillars,
Well, I would say,
any caterpillars in that range would be,
I would think,
Let Carolyn finish, please.
okay, yeah.
no, I'm just saying, I understand that we do have to have a compromise, but I do think it's like, there is other impacts perhaps, I mean, to different populations and just kind of keeping them in.
I think their feeling is the balance of the
Right.
spongy moth
Oh.
damages outweighs that. But,
Right,
But
exactly.
little one, or something.
What I heard you say is correct. If an infestation takes down the trees, it takes down the ecosystem anyway. So whether
Trees-
whether we spray it, if we don't spray it, we wipe out the ecosystem anyway, and those species are gone because they rely on the trees. And if we don't spray it, the ecosystems are gone because the spongy moths kill the trees.
And our goal is guiding the trees for our future generations. We're not thinking about just now, we're thinking of our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren.
When you think about this from an ecological standpoint, and I'm not an ecologist by any means, but you have to think about oak as the keystone species, right, that everything else relies on. If those oaks are gone, everything else is going to go away too. So, again, I understand that there's, the collateral damage and that sort of thing, but when you think about it, if that ecosystem's gone, those things are going to be gone anyway. So,
Well, I
really have to weigh those kinds
Jim,
of
we'll
things.
we'll get to you, just let Carolyn finish up.
No, I get that, because that's what I said, we do some spraying in our yard that I'm not comfortable with, but I understand the larger benefit to what we're doing in our yard. So, given the fact that some areas might be actually kind of small but heavily infested, do you ever consider, is there any drone work done rather than like helicopters or planes that can do a smaller area and still get up on the canopy?
They're doing testing on that. That's the future. Because I know other ag businesses are starting to use drones. So that's, BT is heavy. So that's, but we are testing that. That's the future, It's going to bring costs down. It's going to make it accessible for more people. So we work on the research side and they're testing out, but BTK is a heavy product because it's, it might be, a gallon, which is too heavy for a drone because it's maybe more for splat in the future because splat takes only like 8 ounces for an acre, but We got 64 gazing houses ready to go.
Jim, did you have something you wanted to go with?
You know, you mentioned it a little earlier, we heard something totally different last month. Or very, very different, not totally different, but very different.
Very different. I mean,
And-
part of
and
the
to cover-
presentation was that the birds fed their young off with the spongy moths. And so there wouldn't be anything to feed the young birds.
And-
That's what I remember.
Exactly, and that was, where was she from?
Conservation District. But yeah, it was-
Okay, so,
it was all
now let me
all-
say my point, My point is if our conservation district with 25,000 acres has a totally different opinion of this, don't we have to educate our conservation district people properly?
Well,
That they're telling our homeowners that we can't do anything, that the bugs, or vice versa? Because we have a conflict here within our county of opinion that could be a very serious for our homeowners, our 25,000 acres of conservation that have, where our oaks are preserved. And if they're saying don't spray it,
I think
and you're doing it, we need to get a meeting together with those folks.
I think the important thing is to find the areas and keep the spraying condensed to the
Right,
area.
and I'm gonna hit that later, but.
And we have a lot of publications too within, you know, if you guys are curious on any of the effects on BTK and all of this, we are funded and we're backed by the Virginia Tech University and Michigan State, along with U.S. Forest Service research.
Yours makes sense, just so you understand, what you're saying makes sense to
The
me.
whole science thing.
Mr. Carnes, do you remember what they said that they could, or that they used to spray would do this?
They did.
Because
I
I
don't
got the
remember that they
gist
said
of two
spray
different
anything.
No,
chemicals.
they just said that.
They said rather not spray because the population will crash.
Right, but what was it that they were going to? Maybe they need to get educated on what you were presenting.
Yeah, Scott, you have something to add, and before you guys leave, our assistant administrator, Scott, has sort of a rundown on what we've done in the past, et cetera, that I'd like you, if you're willing, to hear, and see if you had any comments on, did we take the proper corrective action or not at the time, and what we should do moving forward with your advice. So, Scott, I know you had something you wanted to interject right now?
Yeah, the Conservation District's approach, they said they would take a surgical approach. So if they found a tree, a single tree that was infested, they would address that tree in particular. They wouldn't do a spraying or more of a broad-based approach, so surgical to the infected trees.
And I have to say there are some manufacturers that are saying to do injections, and there's no science based on that. That's being driven by the pharmaceutical industry. That's one of our topics we have at our research conference. If there's any science based on using these injections into the trees or these branches that were very effective for EAB, but EAB is a completely separate creature. So I know there have been some tree companies that have been pushing to do injections on just one single tree, but it's not like EAB, which is a different creature.
So maybe this would be a good time, if it's okay, we'd have, Jim, you want something you want to
Just
get in?
one thing.
I mean, John, I'm sorry.
One thing, from hearing, while you were doing this, I went on and just searched BTK, and I couldn't find one thing that said it kills anything other than that.
Okay.
But also too, that if it did kill some of the bugs, because they're natural all around, that they would come back in. You're not going to kill the whole species. You're going to kill them in that 1 acre, and they will fill back in.
Yeah, but I sent a copy of the.
Right, and that is the idea of the extensive monitoring, or
But-
certainly more extensive monitoring in
Right.
whatever area, yeah.
But the other thing that I just remember from last month is you'll see an infestation of, what were the birds that come and eat off of them? There were
Yeah, I don't.
flickers and some of the other birds that come and they'll, when these sponge moths come in, you'll see a growth in other birds that come and eat off of them. So, man, we're hearing two different stories.
It's a little bit. And I think the idea, though, is to be very specific in your treatment. Right now, Scott Hartman, our assistant administrator, has some background information on what we've done in the past. But you guys, please stay here. Please.
Of course.
I'm sorry to be
I'm
director.
gonna sit down, let him take.
No, and I know you've been up there a long time, but thank you very much.
I don't bite.
In case we have any questions of Scott that are contradictory to what you guys might think or whatever, if we can all work on this together and get the right process moving forward, that's the main thing. So Scott, if you give us a little background.
Well, this will be actually pretty brief. It's very high level. As we talked about in the 90s and the early 2000s, McHenry County was part of the Slow the Spread program. In other words, there was treatment that was happening within the county because we were at the leading edge. We were in those transition zones. So action was taken. That ended about 2003. The populations had moved, and then the focus then wasn't so much in McHenry County, more so was heading west, as you see from the data. In 2007, as Nancy pointed out, McHenry County was declared a quarantine county. In other words, the population was established. It was here. It wasn't here. It was going anywhere, and it was going to ebb and flow through its natural courses. So as a quarantine county in 2007, and there's no further federal or state money being spent to address the spongy moth population in McHenry County. I couldn't find anything on 2008, but I'll tell you, in 2009, the county allocated $50,000 to participate in a spongy moth program. And that was done in conjunction with other partners. So there were IGAs that were put together, townships and with municipalities. But there was county dollars that were in to address key areas. I'm not able to provide the data on what was determined to be, what areas were determined to be addressed. But there was a pretty significant program at $50,000. As it was pointed out, there's a lot of sign-off that goes into these programs. So the DNR actually reviewed the areas that were targeted to treat. And there were some where the DNR says, no, can't do this because of its proximity to other species. So it's not just you identify and you can address it. You do have to go through that sign-off process because there was a concern that there could be an effect to other species. 2010, and I think Nancy can show you the population of spongy moths in McHenry County spiked. That was a spike year. 2009 it was growing. 2010 it was a spike. The county spent $4,000 into that program, once again in partnership with other municipalities. And I will pull up the map from the 2010 spring program. If I can find it here real quick. All right, yeah, okay. And this will just show you, it's a pretty big map, so hopefully it goes up pretty quick. This will show you what was addressed. So these, I'm going to call them goldish brown areas.
Sorry, Scott, but I see, down there in the right-hand corner.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what the 2010 program addressed. Once again, through the county and in partnership with other municipal partners. But as you can see, the focus obviously is let's say east of 47, and for those particular areas.
Scott, could you just repeat the years and the numbers? So it was 2010, it was $4,000?
$4,000.
And for the 50,000, what year was it?
2009.
Thank you.
You don't have that map though, right?
I do not have the 2009 map.
Did you spray? That year you sprayed, but that was an IGA?
Well, the county participated in spraying and actually used Hendrickson. Is it Hendricks? Yeah, Hendrickson spraying was the contractor for that. Then 2011, there was nothing that was done, but also too, as the data will show you, the population crashed. So then, since then, it's, they've been in the county, but not to the extent that we're seeing in the last year and this year. There was a good webinar put on by the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, which I participated on, and some of our audience members participated on too. And they really said, what can we expect for this year? Now, this is Wisconsin data, but it really is relevant to here. And they said it's going to be a bad year. So 2023 is going to be a really bad year. I know that the spring sometimes can have an effect on it, as you can talk about spring conditions, but we're bracing ourselves for another bad year. Now, I don't know if Nancy can talk about how the population ebbs and flows, but after you have a bad year, do we expect another bad year next year, or do we expect a crash?
We've seen it both. It depends on the weather with the entomophaga. What a huge, when we talk about populations crashing, insects have, what do you say?
Cyclical populations, yeah.
And we've seen it collapse on its own. I mean, we've seen populations, they ebb and flow, especially in a generally infested area. One of our greatest concerns why our program, we do the treatment, is because we're worried about it spreading artificially as well. But sometimes it's a different thought process when you're in a generally infested area. You might want to just hit like smaller areas. Like these maps are fantastic, and you guys did your own program, amazing. Another, gosh, I think it was 2016, the population collapsed on some of our areas up north. It was a very, there's a, is it a virus?
Yeah.
What's it called?
Yeah.
Entomophaga is a virus that affects.
That's fungus.
A fungus, okay. That's our NPV is the virus. Entomophaga is a fungus that affects the spongy moth. And if you have a warm, wet spring, it's perfect for funguses, as you know. You go morel hunting and all that. And that will affect populations because it's a naturally occurring fungus that attacks the spongy moth and kills it. So we pray for warm, wet springs because that will have a huge impact. Sometimes areas will collapse just because of that. So we have outside factors too that are working with us. You know,
I was just gonna say, I always try to like relate insect populations to us, right? And it's a good analogy in the sense that we can relate to human interaction better than bug. 5-6 years ago, we caught like maybe 3,000 male moths throughout the state in our entire trapping process. And I think the last 3 years, we've been like 10,000, 10,500, and like 11,500. So yeah, we've been seeing an upward trend. But as those populations grow, you have more individual interaction. They can transmit diseases. Nancy mentioned NPV, which is something that was brought over and introduced as a disease biological control. So as those populations grow, they interact and actually physically touch each other while they're feeding and crawling around. They can pass that disease around, and it'll knock their populations down. So that's why we see that ebb and flow now that, again, this bug has been around for a long time, so there is the entomophaga that's around. But again, we need the right conditions for that to sprout up. The NPV is a good example, but we need them to be in high enough populations where they're literally bumping into each other to spread that and pass that around. So we are kind of at their mercy as far as that population goes for those crashes, but we do see every decade or so. And then the other interesting thing, just to point out, a little tidbit here, trivia. Back in the day, you guys actually had the program manager living in McHenry County, so he might have shown up at some and maybe had a little bit of influence or.
Jim Kavanaugh lived in McHenry County, and he was one of the founding members of, even before the slow spread, back in the 90s, he was doing consulting work up here, helping you guys do treatments. So, yeah, so you had that interaction as well.
Okay, Jim, did you have something you wanted to?
Well, my question is timing. We certainly have had programs in the past. Our question is timing this year. Are we already too late?
Yes,
We just had a conversation yesterday that our target date is the 15th if we could, but that's a Monday, so we're looking at spring the 16th. So it's going to be impossible to mobilize and get everything set by the 16th. We start our treatment process in November, December.
But
So-
what we want to do too with this year is find out exactly where your infestations are. You don't want to just say, okay, we're going to just do this house and this house, because you might have an area right in between them too. So, like when we
I guess my question is more for the 100-acre
Yes.
woods.
Yes.
And then, is it too late for them to mobilize a spray?
yes, 100%.
They can't spray this year?
No. You have to get all that paperwork we start in November and December to get your permission from DNR. But you have to do what I suggest is what we do, and any program does within the eradication or suppression, is we do 2 years of data. So yes, we know that they have an infestation, but you also have people that don't want the spray program. So you have to collect your data. You can't just go, it's politically, you guys know, you can't just go in and say, we're going to spray this area. You kind of have to have your backup data and where you want to stop a spray block. You don't want to stop too soon, because if your neighbor over here has a huge infestation and you only spray this area, these guys are gonna move right back in here the next year. You're gonna
There's-
waste your.
Okay.
There's also the education and outreach side of it.
Right.
Yeah.
You may
Okay.
have everybody in
Very
the
important.
subdivision that wants it except one person, and then that person's gonna put a hold on everything because
Right, right.
they wanted something looked at closer.
So then my next question is to Scott. On those years that they allocated money, funding, one was $40,000, 50? Did they spend that 50,000?
Appears to be. The resolution authorizes expenditure of $50,000 in 2019.
And your trap catchers are really good too, to help with the funding. If you show up with the data, like I can help you collect that data, we can collect that information, so then you can present to your county boards and everything for money allocation.
But
Our
to tag
budget
on.
is in
Let
November.
Jim finish, please.
Yeah.
Just my train of thought, then I'll stop.
Yeah.
But our budget is in November. If we're too late this year, how do you allocate money for it that you're not going to be able to spend anyway?
Well, and Nancy's going to answer that because she'll have data for us by when?
September, my data is complete.
And
on
that's
the
my
maps.
point. This comes up when we start in November, which is our budget process. Then we can actually budget it in
Mhm.
to our process if we want to spend 50, whatever. If it comes up real strong, you might want to
Well,
spend.
it sounds like we'll have the data before then. Lou Hader.
So we can't take any
really-
action today.
To follow up on Jim's question, we can't help you right now,
This year.
this year.
But
We
we
can't
can-
help, well, that's the request, but we can create a plan for next year, and then Jim, like you said, put it into the budget, so we're ready to launch before the season.
We have to launch in November.
If we had a resident call us today from an area in the action area, and we went out there and we found the biggest infestation we've ever found in Illinois, we would not be able to spray it in 2 weeks.
No.
Couldn't
We
do it.
have, it's that
We would
signing
have to
off.
wait till next year. So what we
Okay.
would do would be exactly what we were saying to you guys earlier, is we'd go out, we'd trap it, and try and get a better idea of how big that area is. Because Nancy mentioned 2 years is ideal, but when we treat, it's based off of the trap catches from the year before. Plain and simple, that's what we go back and say, we're treating this area because we caught 100 in this trap, and 400 in this trap, and 500 in this trap. And that's what people see, and they say, oh yeah, there's a problem there, so yeah, I can see why you're treating.
We do an environmental assessment, which is like, 30-page document saying why, we've looked at other options. I can send you a copy of it. It's public information. And we do an environmental assessment for every year we do treatment, and we file it with the federal government saying, these are the trap catches, this is the history, this is what we've done in the past. We look back 5 years for, trapping and treatments, and we go through every biological, option, and then we file everybody has to file with EchoCat. That's what the DNR, and they do. They will be like, nope, there's a Heinz Emerald dragonfly habitat there. We don't want to take any chance of you hurting, anything in that area. So
And that's specific to the threatened and endangered species.
yeah, that's why the DNR has it. You can go online if you want to learn more about EchoCat. It's ECOCAT. That's how everybody has to file this when they're doing treatments of any type.
So that Lou had done.
Yeah.
Carl, you want this?
I'm not sure if it's to you or to Scott, from what, being new. I heard that we spent money to try to eradicate. Hearing that we have a department that's in opposite with these gentlemen.
Somewhat.
Yeah.
Somewhat, because
And-
they actually, the Conservation District actually did say, as Scott said, surgical, which means find your area, don't just go start spraying.
Right. But hearing that, hey, and it isn't Einstein to figure that it takes time to get all the permitting, are they actively involved in having, because it looks like she's had data for, a decade almost. Is there a program already in monitoring this with an action item to try to, prevent this, like Mr. Kern said, for next year? It seems like we're pushing the ball, but have they been doing it? And if they haven't, how come?
When you say have they, who's they?
The organization that, went out and tried to
These people aren't
eradicate
doing it because they're involved with the Stop the Spread.
the testing of it,
Right.
but we did spray, and we had our department.
I assume there was a testing done at that time and it warranted spraying. or we had a administrator that lived in the county and had a little pull to get some spraying done here for us.
The spraying that you're seeing on this map is done on your own, as you know, so.
Yeah, right.
And it's, a lot of times when homeowners call us, and or a municipality, like we had Brandon from Park Ridge. He had homeowners call him with defoliation, and he's the forester for, I mean, this is just a town, we're not looking countywide, but this is in Park Ridge.
Thanks for using WebEx. Visit our website at www.webex.com.
That's our commercial. So he worked on his own because he also is in an area that is monitoring. And we put out traps one year. A homeowner called one year. So then he contacted us, Scott, and we got traps out. And he put traps out in Park Ridge. And then he was able to do the next year a very different, he started with the budgeting because about, September we have the counts. He started working with his county or his city board and was able to do a very defined area for his treatment. And then he contacted with the contractor, so on their own.
Good. Mr. Kattner.
Yeah, what it looks like to me is if we're gonna do anything at all this year, we need to encourage somebody to actually get the traps out and get the data.
And I see Nancy up there with a handful of cards that she's getting.
No, but without that, we won't have a
Right.
program next year either. If
Correct.
you don't have the data, you're not gonna have a program.
And you can
so-
put something in your newsletter or say something,
Well, I was going to suggest if the committee would support, we can get messaging out through our communications team to the homeowners or to the county. I'm saying that if somebody would like to get a trap, they could work with Nancy, so we can provide them the resources that would help collect data, if you would support that.
Well, I think in fairness, we'd have to do it countywide
Yeah.
for our informational purposes and see who steps forward. It sounds like Nancy's willing to work with whoever was.
that's what we
willing.
do. And, and if there's district foresters or town foresters, if you have something in Marengo, if you want to just reach out to your foresters as well, or your public works
Someone who
people.
could coordinate it for that area, is that what you're
Yeah, a
saying?
public work, we
So-
work with a lot of public works people.
Right.
Like right now, I'm working with the public works guy over down in
Shared
Lamont, but also I work with a forester in Park Ridge. So those people are, reach out to them, and then the homeowners, and you won't have that many homeowners. We have
Well, it might be a little more than a lot of homeowners want to take on, for starters.
Well, and
If
one
you have
thing that
somebody
I-
in a position of authority.
One thing that I keep thinking is that, with a situation like this, from a treatment perspective, you're gonna have people that are for and against it, no matter what, right? You may just never have anybody from the conservation district say, we wanted to participate in a treatment because they're a conservation district. If you say we're gonna come on that land and kill something, that is against their policies. But a homeowner that's trying to protect the value of their property is a complete 180 in that sense, that they probably want it. We get more homeowners calling us about wanting treatments than anybody else, any other demographic.
And I'm sure there's reasons for and against on both sides.
Yeah, and then you have municipal foresters
That
that
measure
Yep,
what
yep.
the most is.
So again, I don't feel like you want to force this down anybody's throat, but sit back and see who's interested.
Tim, did you have something more you wanted to say? Then we
in
had to wrap this up
Scott's,
a little bit here.
in Scott's part about putting it out to the groups and everything to see what interest is there, if somebody would participate. What is the group for McHenry County that wants to save the old oak groves?
It's the oak canopy.
Historic preservation, we have our Heritage Grove program.
So that might be the group right there to spearhead this thing.
That might
For,
be.
to
I was gonna
get
say-
that word out to everybody. They're trying to save oak trees. That's what's being killed here.
Actually, I was going to suggest that we'd have the oak canopy conservation district. Is that what it's called? I know that they did a presentation one time previous, 3 or 4 years ago. I went to it, and it was about the oak canopy and how it's been devastated.
I think this is a perfect
I think it
fit.
could tie in, certainly.
And last year, we got a lot of phone calls from McHenry County, from homeowners, and they were very good. They were great. They were all very educated, very involved, and it was, my phone rang off the hook, and they were all super nice people.
Okay, I think we've got a plan, an idea going forward. So Carolyn, about one more time, we're going to
One more
start
time,
wrapping
because I
this
just
up.
want to say, in fairness, when the Conservation District came in, the wildlife biologist did state that was not her area of expertise.
Oh, yeah.
And she did some research to bring as much knowledge as she could. And I do think that if we're gonna have a conversation about what they do or don't do, they have to be at the table so that they can be saying why they do it and why they don't. They do have a big woods program that is also done through the foundation to kind of get that going. The Land Conservancy is very active in doing their oak, their oak program. And so I think there's a lot of good work being done, and they need to be at the table when we have.
There's another group, the Land Conservancy group, that we could reach out to,
So-
because they've got a lot of properties everywhere.
Right.
And not that they have an infestation, but they are a good group of people that might want to help with getting the traps.
Yeah.
out.
Get these people to the table.
Larry, can I have
Data collection, you don't have a
Right,
program.
right, we got
Right,
that.
right, no, you're right. Let's go.
Okay.
Can I ask a point about procedure?
Sure.
Would it be important to keep this topic on our agenda and just make sure that it's moving, like just for an update?
I have no problem with doing that. I don't know the rest of the committee. Scott could give us at this point, a monthly update to make sure we get the ball rolling.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
to,
we're happy to do so, and I think the next step is getting the word out about trapping, so we can collect the
Okay.
data, and I can
Yeah.
report
Doesn't
on
have to be
the
long.
effectiveness of that.
Yeah, we're not looking for a huge thing, just a monthly update. We got the word out, a monthly update that Nancy's contacted some people, like
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, our communication's always been really good, so,
You guys can work back and forth on that, so Scott can bring it to us, so,
yes.
because at some point, if it comes to it, and we agree that spraying is the answer, we gotta sell it to the whole county board.
exactly.
And we'll need data and background as a committee to be able to do that.
And we have a lot of outreach material, and that website is Slow the Spread, and go to the outreach, slowthespread.org, which is the website that kind of is our foundation. There's an outreach tab, and there's a lot of videos and information on there. There's handouts, there's Illinois handouts that we've created, just to help with that message and helping people understand, not just be like, we're gonna spray, but here's why, here's, the effects of this. And so we have all those publications and research on our website.
So do we have your permission, like the Oak Canopy people,
Great.
the conservation, to give them your name, number, and
Yep.
and information? Okay, so that if they want traps, they know who to contact us.
Yeah, I have envelopes and the traps already, and they just have to give me their address and the count, so I have to check the trap. I even have a video online on YouTube how to assemble the trap.
Okay.
I'm just gonna-
They're very conscientious-minded people. I'm sure that they'll follow through with it if they ask.
Fantastic.
Yep.
I just was gonna ask if we could get that presentation sent so that we can have that. Your
The PowerPoint?
presentation, PowerPoint.
I have it, I can distribute it out to the committee.
Okay, great.
And then, but if you let me, can I update it, because I was in a hurry and because we're in the spray program. Every time there was the word gypsy, I just put a little colored block over it. So if you'd let me revise it before you guys hand it out, because I had to, if you notice there's kind of gaps in there, that was because I had to quick cover the word gypsy up.
Is
so.
that something you could do in a month, Nancy?
I'll do it by next week.
Okay, no, well, that'd be great, but I'm thinking as part of the update, for our Scott for next month, that he would have that in place and,
Yeah, I'll get all the corrections out of there and clean it up, and maybe we'll even put a little bit of a slide on the technology, like of the
That's
spray,
great.
how that works, so I'll throw that in there too, but yeah.
I feel like we're making some headway on this. I feel this is great.
It's fantastic.
And we're here to help.
Anyone else at the table have a question? Otherwise, we need to wrap it up and get moving on to some other stuff.
Couple of months ago.
Fantastic. Thank you for the presentation. Appreciate it
Thank you.
100%. Look forward to working with you in the future. Great.
Okay, and then just excellent, but to grab the
And then,
gypsy bone. Just pretend it
it's
doesn't exist.
10:30 something or
Yeah,
another.
use them up.
Exactly, we're saving taxpayer money.
Okay.
Okay, it's just be spongy, Mom.
You guys did great job this morning.
Thank you very much.
And as a committee, I think we're going to, again, we're going to take 5-10 minutes as a committee and take a break. And then we'll get back to business in, say, 10 minutes. 10:48.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
so we're going to call the Planning, Environment, and Development Committee meeting of May 2nd together. Yeah, we're going to let them take their conversation outside, that's good. Dan, we ready? We're on? Thank you. So we're going to move on to the routine consent agenda. Does anyone have anything that they want to move from the routine consent agenda? Jim?
7.2.
7.2. Is there anything else that wants to be removed from the routine consent agenda? Carolyn?
Would you do 7.1 just to kind of talk about it? I don't have any specific questions, just a
Okay.
quick review. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sure Mr. Hartman will be back to talk about that. Or is he still here? Okay, you'll talk about it? Okay, but not right now, not right now. It's okay.
Sorry.
In a minute, but not long, I guess. Okay, that's it, those two. We have two other items on the routine consent agenda, so I'd like a motion to move forward with the routine consent agenda, items 7.3 and 7.4. Moved by Lou, seconded by Carl. Is there any conversation? No, there's no conversation on the routine consent agenda. We'll go to vote. Jim?
Yes.
Lou?
Yes.
Carl?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. So 7.3 and 7.4 are done. 7.1, this is the program, and we've done this several times the last couple of years, Carolyn, but I know you're new to it, so who wants to start? Joanne, if you would go ahead and lead the way with this, that'd be great, thanks.
I was going to say good afternoon, but it's still morning, so that's good. With respect to this grant right here, we have a $1.5 million dollar grant to purchase flood-prone properties within the county. And we received that grant from the Department of Natural Resources Office of Water Resources. And with that, we were to purchase up to 7 properties and associated open space. Let's say they've got empty lots next to them. And in this case, we have one here at 2428 Greening Road in Nunda Township. It is in the Orchard Heights neighborhood. It is owned currently by a bank. It has a long history of violations within our Planning and Development Department and the Health Department with respect to this property. It is in the floodplain, and we know it is flooded in the past. It is a repetitive loss flooding structure. There are only 2 houses in this little neighborhood, in this little cul-de-sac here. We have purchased the one on the south side, coincidentally from a bank too. And so this one is the second one in that little area. The township will be taking over the properties. At this point, the Conservation District is not interested in these because they're kind of one-offs for them. Although they have properties to the south up here, it is prime in the future for, open space, by all means, this will stay as open space in perpetuity, and that's part of the grant agreement. But in this case, we're purchasing 4 lots consecutively together where the home is, and then 1 empty lot, which is on one of the channels just to the east on the riverside. It's a small little lot there. So that's, in a nutshell, what we're doing here. We get an appraisal, and it is at fair market value. It's a willing buyer, willing seller. We do not do any type of eminent domain for these properties. The owner has to agree to the sale price. They can get their own appraisal if they so choose and they think that ours was too low, but they are done by a certified appraiser. When we get the report, it's done like a normal transaction of a buyer and a seller.
Okay. So looking at the map that you provided in the packet, or somebody provided in the packet, so we've got the floodway. You've got the 4 properties.
Yes.
And so those are the 4 properties, and then the other one is on the other side of the water that backs up to the same, they both back up to that.
No, it's going to be over, sorry. If you look at it, there's the 4 properties together.
Yeah.
We did look at those 2 little ones that were kind of on the other side of the channel. Those property owners decided not to sell, so those were off the table.
Oh, so
We're
that
not
both
gonna
front Riverside?
Yeah, but then go over to the west,
Mhm.
at right where it says Brentwood Lane, and Sitter again, the owner was Sitter.
Oh, there, okay.
So that parcel right there.
So how many so all of those homes are in the floodplain?
They are.
They're all in there?
Was I spacing off? Did we do a motion for this?
Please don't.
Maybe I spaced out.
Oh,
Okay, I move to approve.
Thank you, John.
7.1.
I'll second.
Okay, so we can open for discussion on 7-1.
Okay,
Let's start again.
so, but how many homes roughly are there still in, I mean, are there quite a few homes still in that?
On West Riverside Drive, there are there's probably a dozen homes on Riverside.
Okay.
In some in better condition, some in worse condition. They are all livable, but they're in the floodplain, they're in the floodway. And that whole street from right where Brentwood Lane and Riverside meet, that whole street gets inundated and flooded in 2017. You could not access that entire area when the river came up. So that's it, just for what it is. That's just how it goes there.
Right. Correct me if I'm wrong, if you own a home in a floodplain and it floods, you have to disclose that when you sell it.
Well, I think probably, Larry, you've got a better understanding of the real estate disclosure laws,
Yeah.
but I think on there is a little checkbox that says, I am
Okay.
aware or I am cognizant of
You also have to have flood insurance.
So those two homes that,
Nobody has to do anything.
Right.
nobody
But
has.
state law says they should,
Okay.
or they're in trouble if they get down the road, yeah.
Okay.
So go ahead, Carl.
One question, on the 5 properties, just hypothetically, has anyone pulled the tax records to see the revenue that we would not be getting each year from them?
I can do that, and I can
Just-
get that to you, but I mean, so you look at the tax bill, so a tax bill is 2/3 school district. There's no house there, so no kid is going to school there, so the majority of your tax bill is not going to the education factor. You're looking at maybe $25, $30 for road and bridge, maybe $50 for the township. These are unincorporated, so you don't get municipal taxes. But again, that goes for road maintenance, that goes for snow plowing, that goes for emergency services, that goes for a lot of the things that the cost of one emergency service, let's say in 2017, with respect to sandbagging or emergency evacuation by the fire district to get in there with a boat and firemen or whomever, emergency, that's gonna far outweigh in 1 year's time the amount that you pay in for taxes in that township or that road and bridge fund.
And there's plenty of health and environmental issues with these properties. You get a vacant house like that and it's flooding, it's just bad for the whole neighborhood, drags the whole neighborhood that much further down. So, we've been pretty successful with this in different ones. Anything else on that? Okay, we'll go to vote. John?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Lou?
Yes.
Carl?
Yep.
And I'll vote yes. 7-1 will move forward.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. 7-2, Jim, you pulled this?
Yeah, to discuss it, I'll move to approve it.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion to approve this. We have a second? I'll second it.
Okay, and so with my discussion on this, or thoughts on this is if the landmark, we have the Richardsons who are willing to move this building. There's 3 buildings, so in our, was I the only one who didn't see a picture, any photos? In our thing? I didn't see any pictures.
The only one was the barn and then some smashed silos or something that were,
That was on the second one on there.
Yeah.
No, I missed that one. I
There's a
can't
bunch
get
of
my
pictures.
computer up
It is
right
on
now, I
there.
can't get it, but I did see it at home anyway. And my thought on this is the landowner is opposed to this. The current landowner, Jack
Oh.
Lees. He spoke here in public comment. We have someone who would move that one significant structure, the round octagon. That is the significant structure here. In our county, all the barns are basically falling down if you don't go in and fix them or at least put a steel roof on them. As of one, some of you know, I personally have redone my barn, and I know the cost involved just providing all my own labor. So I know the cost involved. This is a greater cost than I believe the organization has the landmark organization has to do this project. Now, as an event center, it won't have the silo in the center of it the way it is originally. So will it be like the original barn? No. But if we landmark this, that can happen as of today. And so I would like to see us not pass this. And the organizations all involved work with the different people who would move those structures or whatever. Or get the other people to come in and fix the remaining 2 structures. Maybe it has no significant value to them at that point without the other 2 barns. But the main barn, which is telling me the only one left in the county, okay? I believe the Richardsons have the wherewithal to at least save the structure for people to do it. That landowner, ifs and nuts, but if he never sells that property to someone else, the conservation district or whoever, if he doesn't sell that, he doesn't have to put a dime into that property, that building, if it's landmarked. They don't have to do it. You can't force them to do anything. So landmarking this structure to try to save it only dooms it to destroy it, more so than possibility of what's to come. So I don't support this resolution because of that. And I'm the guy who wants to save every barn in the county because that's a heritage that is no longer here in this county.
Carl, I think Carl was next.
I don't know procedure-wise, but is there a way just to take this whole subject here back to the Historical Society and planning to, since you have a new, the Richardsons wanting to come in and let them hash that out and then bring it back to us?
I don't have that answer for that question. I was just giving my opinion.
That's okay, Adam's getting up right behind you.
Yeah,
Carl was looking right past you.
Sorry, Mr. Kearns.
Yeah, so after the HPC makes such a recommendation, then it goes to the county board. The county board can either approve it or send it back to the commission with revisions that would suggest, kind of exactly what you were summarizing there, or any other input. So those are the 2 options: approvals or send it back to the commission for further discussion and direction.
So if we don't do anything, it'll go to the county board as old business, or what? Because you said county board would approve it or send it back, or us as a committee can send it back.
As a committee, when we looked at it, it didn't really stipulate it. It's kind of said it would review. It's very similar to what I'm trying to think of. Some of the other. It's acting as a resolution. So that's the way we were looking at it from a procedural standpoint, that this would get reviewed and either sent back or go forward for vote.
Okay, that's clear enough. John had something first, Lou, then?
Yeah, I was gonna just say too, I mean, Adam, can we, at this point, just send it back with a revision to tell them, give them 6 months or a year to see if they can work it out, or can we table this?
I think the direction would be to send it back to the commission, and it makes sense with kind of the new evidence. Steve, you can speak a little bit maybe to this as well, with some new discussions that have come up with Richardson's, that there's more options. They seem to be viable options at that. So maybe there's an alternative to just keeping it and demoing it that is probably more harmonious and advantageous to each party.
Sure.
Lou, did you want to finish up with something?
Yeah, I did want to ask, the landowner doesn't want to sell the property, but would let go of the barn.
Correct.
Okay, and I do.
And not only let go of it, offer several thousands and $1,000s of machinery and compensated time to help them, from what I understand.
And having it be marked a landmark would put other regulations around it in terms of, and we don't want to do that. We want.
We've never been allowed to move it.
Yeah, so, yeah, okay.
Well, there is a way that you could allow them to move it.
Correct.
In landmarks, I'm referring to our historical society here a little bit.
But you have to.
But there's a way to do that, and maybe at this point you'd want them.
Mr. Drew, would you like to speak to it at all?
I appreciate that.
Yes, but please come up so you're on the microphone.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah, whoever wants to speak to it, that's fine. Just give us a little more background. I think what we're seeing is we have an owner that has a letter of opposition, formal opposition here. Obviously, Mr. Peace came in and spoke this morning. We have someone who feels that they can put this to good use and has probably some financial background that could get it done. And so, it's, to me, I'm sitting here thinking, let's get them two together, working a little bit more, and see what they can come to with something more specific, what their plan is and where the money's coming from, before we make this decision. How does that fit into your guys' plan, or if there's other things I need to learn about?
Well, at this point, we don't have a plan around all these new developments. I mean, our role is, right, so we had the application and we had our hearing, we had the public come, we had 30 residents submit letters and more than a dozen in person in support of this. But ultimately, right, so we've recommended that it be landmarked, and there's protections with that, right? That's the purpose of the ordinance, is to make sure that any changes, modifications, any plans such as being suggested would be something that we could control and make sure that it's done in a historically appropriate way. If the board doesn't approve the landmark and establish that status, then they're talking about certain plans, but we have no way to enforce it. If they don't want to follow through with the plans, if they decide they do part of it right, they start to take down the octagon barn, and then they don't rebuild it or rebuild it in a historically appropriate way. So that's where I'm hoping that the board would be willing to have that protection in place, have the landmark designation, and then through the ordinance, there's this certificate of appropriateness process where Mr. Richardson, Mr. Peace, they would come to our commission, and then they would present their plan. We would be able to decide on whether that plan's appropriate, make the appropriate changes. They have the right to appeal to the actual courthouse under that procedure if they didn't like our plan. But then we at least have the protection versus it just being done the way that they want it, and it could turn out fine, but we don't have that assurance.
Yeah.
And
So, okay, no, you go ahead, that's
I was
fine.
gonna say, and this first came about when Peace purchased the property, and he came out and said he planned to demolish all the buildings. Local Historical Society, which I'm also a part of, put forth the application for landmarking to give it some protections. I've also had a couple talks with Mr. Richardson, and even though, the thought behind it is great, wanting to preserve the building, he's already said they do not have funds to do it right now. They're looking for ways to get the funds, and he said it's about a $1.2 million project, and if the protections aren't there, we have no assurances that things will have a proper plan and get done.
So, if anybody else has questions, please feel free to get involved. Does the historical preservation, does your group, where's your finances at to, I mean, you can put a protection on this thing, but there's not $1.2 million there either. And not that it'll take that much because you're not moving it, but.
But the Historical Society, along with a couple other groups, are looking at, depending on who ends up with the property, Pieces already put out a letter saying he would be willing to sell the property to a group like MCCD or others, and then working with whoever takes possession of the land to get grants going and fundraising going to help restore the buildings.
Okay, so that's another if in the
Correct.
bucket there, and Mr. Peace seems to be very open and concerned about protecting the barn, but he also has a business to protect and run, so it's a financial decision somewhat, I'm sure, and if we put more regulations on it for him, it's his time and money. So there's backs and forth, and I'm certainly in favor of protecting that barn and doing what we can, but whoever does it has to have the financial backing to to get there. Carolyn, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just wondering, so if you, like to your point, if you landmark them, I mean, that doesn't mean they necessarily stay there, but then that applies to all the buildings, not just the barn.
And the 2 other buildings that our application
Right,
included in the
Right,
designation.
so it'd be the 3 of them. I'm not sure who else would take them.
Yeah, that is an issue, but,
But-
so say, we did the 3, as the application was saying.
Right.
There was an agreement made that the octagon barn can be moved, and the other 2 are still there, if it's still Mr. Peace's property, then that would very likely be an issue for him, the way I see it, because he's not gonna put the money into fixing them up, yet it's his property, and he doesn't know if he has a buyer for it. Whoever buys it would have to demo them, or not demo them, I guess, and deal with the preservation. So, there's some details here that I think could be better worked out, and maybe down the line, if Mr. Peace has an offer from the Conservation District, it might be a better timing for this, to do this, or if we have something more concrete from the Richardsons and Mr. Peace on how the money's gonna be worked on this. Carolyn, did you have more you wanted to?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, because I think then maybe, I guess the concern would be, if we don't landmark them, he can demolish them.
Correct.
And I think that's where the concern is coming in. If you landmark them, then he doesn't have to upkeep them, but it can't demolish them. I mean, or, so
There
what
is
is the
some wording, and Steve can correct me if I'm wrong, in the legislation that against demolition by neglect. So
Okay.
they can't let it completely go. He has to do, some upkeep.
Right, but if we wanted time, I guess what I'm trying to look for here is a little bit of time to have a further discussion to your point, because I don't know, obviously, if the Conservation District would be interested in the land, but they already, have difficulties maintaining buildings, but if there's funding sources for them, whatever, but taking on more land that has structures on it is difficult. But is there more time to have a conversation about what is the best?
I think there is more time, and I think that's probably where this is gonna end up. John?
As a liaison to the conservation, they do not want any land with the buildings. And the chairman and Elizabeth have both said that piece with the barns on it would be a no for them. So, the demise of that octagon barn would be, in my opinion, to give you guys that landmark status and tie Richardson and Peace's hands, and it would be demised by neglect, in my opinion. I would set you guys back a year or so and let them try to work it out with Mr. Pease to try to get that, and if they don't get it done, then landmark it in a year. I'd say no and suggest come back in a year if they haven't fixed it.
Jim, did you want to follow up?
Well, and to add to that, we're not voting to landmark it today, the board votes it. It takes a couple hours to tear that barn down.
Right.
And that whole facility's, a couple hours with the dozer, it's gone. And your only choice to save this is to get, to my opinion, is to get Richardson's and Peace together and move it, and then these guys try to still make sure it's put together in the historical manner that it was. They won't be putting a silo back in the center. To me, that's...
Jim, this doesn't have a silo in it.
No, it doesn't.
That one has a silo, they said.
There's all around it.
The
It's
silo
gotta-
is gone.
It's
Oh, the
gonna-
silo is gone.
They
Well,
demolished
then it even stands stronger to my point is, we need to let Richardson spend enough time and give him enough time to move this.
Well,
Because by neglect, it's gone. I did this with my own. It's gone very quickly, within a couple years. Once that roof goes, that structure is gone.
Yeah, and I had the benefit of, on the Community Development Housing Grant Commission, the Richardsons come asking for grant money for this procedure of moving the barn. And they gave quite a presentation on how and what they were gonna do and how they were gonna restore the barn itself to a original position, or back to its original condition. But then they also had a wing off this way and a wing off that way to make it more public accessible. Have you seen that?
No,
No, you haven't seen that, okay. Because my next question was what you thought of that, if that would be an acceptable thing for them to do.
there hasn't been great communication from the Peace or Richardson camp.
Okay, because they, I mean, to make it publicly accessible and usable, they need to put in a handicap accessible washroom in the building, et cetera, things like that. So there has to be some type of addition
And
from
we
their
have-
point.
We have no way of putting that input in without it being landmarked. So again, it's kind of circular. I feel we need to get the landmark in, and then we can work with them on the appropriate way of doing things.
Right, and what I heard from Mr. Peace, and maybe, I'll leave it at that, is that he felt that that was gonna be more regulations than he would wanna deal with. If that was gonna be the case, he would probably not work with Richardson.
That's the whole reason for the landmarking process in general, is because these private developers and landowners want to knock everything down, and this gives the county the control of, keeping what is a benefit for the county.
I'm sorry, Carl, did I miss your hand? Or Jim?
Mr.
Jim,
Kearns.
go
I'm
first.
gonna put one last comment on this, and then I'm gonna let the rest of you talk on it. Why I'm mainly opposed to this. It is not our job to tell the landowners on those buildings whether they can have a building there or not, and whether they have to maintain that building. It is not our job to interfere with that part of it. If there is an option with the Richardsons to save that barn, to me, that's golden.
It'd be a lot easier decision if that was in place right now, I understand.
Exactly, but so that's why I totally am opposed to this, because if it were another landowner in a different structure, this were my structure, I would not want it landmarked, because I would have to never be able to change that building without their approval, or to use it for something else, or whatever. I couldn't use it, and if that committee, which 2 years ago, we couldn't get any members appointed to that committee. And the example of that, a prime example of a real structure that needs to be saved is on the Motorola property in Harvard.
Coventry House.
And we can't do anything about it to try to save that building. And that's landmarked, right?
The landmark was revoked by the county.
Yeah, it was.
Right, because of Motorola not being able to get you in there to do anything. But it doesn't tell you the property owner has to let you do anything. And then it falls down.
That is the whole point of the legislation, is to protect these historic sites for the benefit of the county, to keep the private landowners from.
I agree with you at some point, but you have to have a willing landowner. If this landowner is not willing, we cannot do this.
Carl?
If I'm trying to get this straight in my head to tag off Mr. Kearns. Private citizen has some property, you like to landmark it. If he does nothing, it destroys itself, or he's fined by the county for having, garbage.
Well, just for clarification, I don't think we have any authority to, for garbage maybe, but not to enforce their neglect.
If you, like in Johnsburg, you have a structure that's fallen down and you don't take care of it, then you're fined for having junk, or whatever the proper word would be.
Okay.
So if he, none of this was here, if he didn't do nothing, it'd fall down because he didn't, do maintenance on it. We come in as a government telling them, we want to preserve this, and now here's the bill that you have to maintain this from being deteriorating anymore. Is that kind of how that works? We're telling a private citizen he's got to take care of something because we came in and said we'd like it as a historical thing?
Right, that's what the ordinance is for, and the reason for that is that we as a county, when the ordinance was enacted, decided that at some point the value of the history and the value of the structure outweighs those concerns of the property owner.
Then more than likely, like Mr. Kearns says, if that was coming down the pike, there comes the bulldozer full force and taking care of my problem that I got to financially pay for. So if we have a person that says, hey, I want to move it, let them talk and come back to us with the plan.
Again, we don't know that that will be followed through with, and in the meantime, he can just decide to bulldoze the whole site.
If this, well,
Okay.
you're right, I don't think hopefully that's not the idea, but, I mean, as
He
Mr.
already
Kern
said
said,
at the
as Mr.
beginning.
Kern says, between now and our county board meeting, that could be going in tomorrow.
Exactly. So can I?
Yeah, go ahead, Carol.
Just one thing, because I know, and then I'll stop too and listen to everybody. But so I think what I'm hearing is there we know we want to protect the building. Our barns are going. It's too bad the silo isn't there. That would be
Yeah,
very
it's so cool.
You want to have a role in what happens to it once it leaves the property. It seems to me that Mr. Peace is fine with it being removed. He's offering enormous assistance to move it. So I don't see him going in there and bulldozing this thing tomorrow so he doesn't have to have responsibility. I think he cares about it too. So how do we make it so we can protect it so that you can, would we agree, and maybe we don't, that it would be nice to have this historical society, right? Commission, have a role in just overseeing how it's developed on the Richardson property, giving that a little bit of a historical protection in order to help with that process in a collaborative way, not like over town. So to allow you to have that presence without putting undue restrictions on Mr. Peace, because I'm not hearing that he doesn't want these buildings at all. It sounds to me like he wants them, at least the one, to be protected, right? So he might be in total agreement with landmarking that structure with the understanding that there's going to be an agreement with getting it over to the Richardson farm and allow for some input from the commission.
Well,
With that,
What you're saying is we get an approval from the Historical Preservation Commission ahead of time that moving it is okay with them, then at that point, we could go ahead with the landmarking it.
or something to allow for that process to happen, but
Right.
also protect the building.
So, okay, I'm sort of like what you're saying there. Go ahead, Lou.
however, if Richardson's want to rehab it so it's more accessible, they won't be able to do it under your designation.
They do
Because
it
you
in a
have to return-
historically accurate way for the facade. That's because our ordinance
Well, but
just
what I'm
defines the
saying is,
facade.
your regulation would limit what he would be able to do with that building once it went to his property.
There would be some limits, yes.
Well, yes, because I hear, if I were a business person, I wanted to preserve this property and preserve its historical relevance and value, but I also wanted it to pay for itself, because it's a significant investment. I may not be inclined to do it under your regulations, because I do know some.
That pretty much hit the issue at the heart, I think.
Yeah.
And
Well, what are some of the regulations that would keep them from?
Well, ADA accessibility,
Well, but
But you can do that, yeah.
But he
It's-
has
we're
an
all
answer
about
to that
facade,
point,
so
yes,
it's just
so-
making sure the wood planks on the exterior and
Right, so
and
you
the roof
could do-
is done in.
You know what,
a-
I don't feel like.
And I wish you guys would have seen the presentation from the Richardson's family on, their idea of the wing and how they would get people in and out of here. It was quite well done. And I'm hearing from them that they feel that there could be some possible regulations put in place by the Historical Preservation Commission that might hinder them, or at the very least slow them down from getting from point A to point B on this. John, I think you were wanting to.
It was just to recap everything, and I'm sure Joe was gonna come up with some historical information, but this, in my opinion, only works when you have a meeting of all the minds, and right now you only have a meeting of the minds with Pease and Richardson. And to give them that, I'm sorry, and I am for historical landmarks, but given the amount of regulations that you would impede them, I think you would probably clear that deal. So I think that I would just soon put you off for 6 months to a year, let them get an agreement, and let them do their thing, and then if they don't, and if you want to landmark it, but I think all we're gonna do is stop a deal for Peterson to help the ag tourism.
I
This
would,
is my opinion.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't know if it needs to be, that we need to put a time limit on it.
Oh, no, I don't
But,
think we do, but I mean, just a suggestion.
Yeah, but I would like to see it come back after the Historical Preservation Commission has seen what Richardson's plan is. Because then they could give us a little bit more input on whether they think that's proper,
Right.
whether the Richardson plan would be proper preservation or not, and how much it's gonna hinder them from moving forward with this plan if it is landmarked. Am I
I agree
getting
with-
that out there correctly?
Yeah, because
I-
I think what I'm hearing, and this is, sometimes we say, okay, this is gonna hinder this regulation. He hasn't even stated to us what those regulations would be and how that would impact the construction of that building. So that, to your point, I think that they need to have a conversation with Richardson and whether or not some of the things that you would have to require of that building, would that hinder them? And what would that mean to them?
And come back to us
And
and
then
let
come
us
back
know
to us and let
whether,
us know what kind of a.
what's gonna be the
Yes.
best path to save this building.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And could one of us be at that conversation from this committee, just to, so
I think
somebody?
they could come back, either one of them, and if we table this for 30 years, I'd say 60 days would be more appropriate, but,
We meet tomorrow evening, and then it would be the first Monday of June would be the next regular meeting for our commission.
About 60 days.
Yeah.
You know, because Peterson's
Could
already
you
said
go
he
through
doesn't
those
want
pictures?
landmark.
So what are the other two structures?
Yes.
See that nice pictures?
You can't see, there's one, there's a,
I see the one already falling down.
right.
well, there's,
He's already.
The one behind that is not part of
Oh
the
my
plan.
gosh, look at that.
Yeah, it's pretty spectacular building.
Oh my gosh.
You know, it
Had
reminds me
something
of
like
Rose's
that, they did
Meat
a
Farm in
barn.
Barrington, they did that to a barn too, but they had to take some liberties with that building to be able to make it work.
So,
if I can, I asked him to pull these up.
It's
when you guys were
fabulous.
talking. There's a couple things that I noticed when they talked about handicapped accessibility. First off, that's accessible at the ground level right now. If you go back up one more picture, you'll see what that hole is in the side. That hole in the side is not an accurate structure for antiquity. That's an aluminum-sided door frame that somebody cut into the side of it. So if you're going to restore it to its accuracy, that wasn't part of the original barn. There's no way.
Crossbuck doors on there.
Well, I'm sure they did. But
it'll be after a little bit of give and take on how they do
Right,
it. but-
I understand it. And so I'm looking at this going, guys, this is a great thing to be moved. The only thing, I'm sure if Richardson's weren't involved in it, it would already be done.
Yes.
Is my overall reaction. I don't see, I'm not trying to pick on Jack Pease one or the other, but he didn't buy it to save this barn. And as far as other structures, I know you said there's 2 other barns here. I couldn't find them in these pictures.
They should have given you all the pictures up there.
2 pictures up from there
Two
is.
pictures up there, you can see an edge of the Quonset hut. I think that's something I can see.
They had a
Well, no,
black
that's
and
not
white
it.
one of them, but
On the right,
Yeah.
the ones with metal roofs.
All right, in either event.
This is the Rainbow Truss
Oh,
barn.
Okay.
Oh,
And this is the one that replaced the original barn when it burned down. All the farmers in the area had come together and rebuilt the barn for him in a week's time.
At any rate, if property owners aren't interested in it, I generally speaking, am not interested in watching it fall down
Yeah.
over time. And you know,
would
you
anybody be
mentioned
willing to
one
make
up
a
at the
motion to
Coventry
table
House.
this for 60 days?
I'll make that motion.
We got a
I'll
motion
second that.
to table it by Mr. Gottemauer for 60 days to our meeting, let's see, July meeting.
July meeting's fine.
And Mr. Reiner seconded. Is there any discussion regarding,
Yeah,
Yes.
I would really like to see you make this work. That's what I would like. I would like you to, like the Historic Commission and,
okay, but let's talk to the idea of tabling it.
yeah.
But
and-
this doesn't
and
stop-
Come back to us with to make it work.
And I would encourage you to look at Richardson's plan and come back with a little idea of if that works for you guys or doesn't, or if they can come back and, you know, you, the Richardsons and Mr. Peace are here
Yes.
letting us know you're sort of all on the same page.
For
We-
clear,
Pardon?
this does not, by us tabling this, because I would rather vote no, this does not stop Peace and Richardson's from moving forward. If they said, we're gonna go with this, and they could start tomorrow moving that structure. This does not stop that. And I wanna make sure that we don't have any thoughts or misleading that we're going to be stopping it for 60 days, because that's not my
I
intent.
need a little bit of idea on the procedure that,
Gives that
since
time to talk.
they filed this, does that put a hold on it, Adam? Is that? what
It does not.
It's
So
an
it does
A1
not.
property.
There's-
It's gone.
I mean, there's penalties in the ordinance, just like it would be for anything else for demolition without a permit. The other penalty that would come of it if there's, once it's landmarked, is that there would be, this property would be ineligible for receiving any building permit for a period of 5 years.
Okay, but the landmarking of it
It's
right
not
now.
landmarked. Right now, it's like any other building.
They could move
But
it
if we
if they
vote
want.
no,
Done it
it's,
last week.
if we vote no, that's the same issue anyway. I mean, if we sit here and say no to the landmarking, what you just said doesn't change.
You're gonna tie this property up for 5 years? No way.
No, I understand, what I'm saying is but to your point of holding it for 60 days and allowing them to have the conversation, whether we say no or we sit for 60 days, you could still go in there and take the building down.
Yeah,
Right, but
the application
if
for
we allow
landmark.
landmarking,
No, right.
to
so
tie
we're not
that
doing
20 acres up for 5 years, we're nuts.
But Jim, the application for landmarking has no bearing on what they do for the next 60 days.
Right,
So
I understand.
We don't need to vote no.
So I just want to be clear that you weren't stopping their progress.
I mean, just, so.
We invite Phil to.
Sure, please introduce yourself. We're looking for all the information we can get.
Thanks, Phil.
Phil Brown, Officer Jack Peace.
And, excuse me, introduce yourself again, please.
Phil Brown,
Okay,
I'm at the Officer Jack Peace, I work for Jack.
okay,
And been involved in this process
yeah, okay.
from the start. So, just to recap, I know it's the desire of the commission to want to save everything. Drive down the road, want to save this, it's old, want to save this, it's old. The problem you have to, that everyone, whether it's a private landowner, conservation district, is there has to be some sustainability to maintain it, to keep it up. Buildings, everybody knows, takes money. So Mr. Pease and Mr. Richardson are interested in relocating this. Mr. Pease is not interested in the other two structures. They're too far gone. There aren't pictures here because they're too far gone. The pictures would speak 1,000 words. And they're not, the Rainbow Trust Barn is not, it's very common in McHenry County. You can go anywhere and see those that have been saved. So to keep in mind the sustainability of how is this going to remain for future generations? Richardson's have a great plan. However, if they go through all the motions, taking this thing down, restructuring, putting it in another location, the commission could very well come back, say, well, you can't do that, can't do that, can't do that. So now we're back to how's this going to be sustainable? The Richardson can't use it. I think I heard him say that they would like to make an event center out of it to carry itself. If their hands are tied to do that because it's landmarked, we keep going around in a big circle. So Mr. Pease has no intention of going in here tomorrow and tearing it down. He'd like to see it moved and some common sense sustainability to it. So I don't think the group committee here needs to worry about bulldozers coming in tomorrow, pushing it over. The other two structures are rapidly falling apart. And to move one structure, to save one structure, move it, great idea, but there's got to be conversation on the other two buildings. So, you know, perhaps maybe it's a give and take arrangement, however everybody wants to do it. So I just wanted to clarify.
Okay, well, thank you. So right now we have a motion on the floor to table this for 60 days to the July meeting. And I'm going to call a vote on that. Is it? So, John?
Yep.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Lou?
Yes.
Carl?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Thank you for your time and efforts. I think everybody here is sincere when they say they'd like to see that saved, but we need to find the correct way to do it. And if you can come back within 60 days with some more details from the Richardsons and look at their plan, and I mean, I did have the benefit of seeing it. I thought it was very realistic in what they were going to need to do, but that might not fit your concept of preservation, and that's something I would need to know before I could make a good vote on this. So that's it for today. But thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Old business, resolution, let's see, we need a motion for a resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between McHenry County and McHenry-Lake County Soil and Water Conservation District. Could I have a motion for that? Moved by Carolyn, seconded by Joe. Okay, this is something we dealt with a few months ago. We've been having meetings with Mr. Kearns and myself. We're at the last one, I think it was the last one, with the Farm Bureau, et cetera, and discussed on how we could make it work for the agricultural community and also preserve our floodplain status criteria, is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the services that we're looking to maintain and required to maintain. We have had a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions. The only real change in the ordinance, in the resolution that's before you, is the modification of the wording in the agreement itself. So it'd be an agreement for 1 year and renewed, and while I'm reading it out loud, I see a typo, renewed annually for up to 9 additional years. So previously.
Yeah, but it's after the approval of the P&D committee, right? Each year, we do it each year.
It comes back.
Comes back to us.
That's the intent. That's what was discussed at the last committee meeting, was that there was interest in seeing this back annually as opposed to having an automatic renewal. So that's the change that's material in front of you. The changes that were derived out of all those meetings were procedural. You know, at the first meeting, we had extensive discussions on whether or not the ordinance would be required to be changed or not. And it was pretty clear that it would not require changes, at least anticipated at this point in time, and that the crux of these issues were related to some very specific developments in agriculture, on agricultural properties in relation to wetlands, and we're changing the procedures. Really, what it'll be is, formerly they would often go through SWCD. Through different communication channels, outreach, etc. There was just an open line of communication. Then they would turn into, the department would almost turn into one of the agents that would be noticed of, as opposed to now what we're looking to do is it would channel through P&D, and then we would have those discussions with SWCD. So we've spoken with their staff, we've got it at least organized to the point of, when communications come in, bring us in, and then we'll slow it down. We're not talking about a great number of issues, but we're talking about maybe 6 or 7 per year. And within that, the next level of detail would be to get into what that scope of work is and start looking at the ordinance and providing interpretations and determinations to that property owner or authorized developer.
Okay, and the Farm Bureau's comfortable with what we're proposing for changes of procedures.
They've stated to
Yeah.
me that they have been comfortable, certainly.
So I have trust in that, Jim. I'm going to ask you for a little input, because I know you were at that meeting.
Right, and I believe on the Farm Bureau, for this to go through, we're already over halfway through the year with this one. We've already got a bill that we have to pay on the first part of this. And so I think the Farm Bureau is in agreement enough that to let this proceed through the end of this contract.
Yeah, and I'm comfortable.
And make sure
with
that
what we've
the
done.
actions actually happen.
And I know it's, some of this has been done at meetings that others here weren't at, but it was very productive meetings. Staff has gone out of their way to work on some procedures and how it's going to be done in the future. I think we had a meeting of the minds from the Farm Bureau. So I'm comfortable with it, certainly, and we're going to review it again next year. I don't have the resolution up in front of me, but if it's not in there, please put it in there for the county board meeting. Any other discussion on moving this forward? Okay, we'll go to vote. Jim?
Yes.
Lou?
Yes.
Carl?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
John? And I'll say yes too to that. We'll move on to reports, I believe, ZBA. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ZBA things. A little late in the day, Adam, and I see Renee's not here, and I see approve on all of these. Please just, if there's one that we need to review further on our own, just let us know.
Sure. No, there's, we have one landscaping business with outdoor storage. There's no development on the site just yet. We have one property with 2 residences. That's the Coral Township. Those are going to be split off and rezoned to A2s. So there's basically 2 of the same classic A1 to A2s. And then we have 2 that came from the hearing officers, variations on setbacks.
Okay.
They're pretty clean, all approved, all recommended for
I'll
approval.
recommend it for approval. If anybody has further issues on it, after they read their packet, they can certainly contact Adam or Renee, or me if you would like, and I'll tell you to contact Adam or Renee. I'm kidding. Okay, so that's ZBA, Regional Planning Commission update.
Sure.
Adam or Carolyn, if Adam has it, hit it pretty quick.
You know what? Then 9.2 and 9.3 are identical. So we had a meeting last Thursday. We've got another meeting coming up. I forget the exact date. 27th of May, I believe, is when it's scheduled. And these 2 meetings are really they're workshops for the commission. And we have a few more commissioners that have joined the meeting. We've also kind of pressed on and through last year, and there was just a little bit of confusion or some collective ambiguity or ambiguous understanding of certain topics. So we're going kind of back through this information again. So last Thursday was a tremendous meeting where we worked through some of these overarching lenses, these themes that are going to be present throughout each chapter. So looking at livability and sustainability and all these kind of everything that should be prevalent when we talk about agriculture or sustainability and land use in general. We're likely going to have another one of those. That's what May's meeting is likely to be. Because then we're going to get into each of those chapters and really kind of hash out the details. Probably the biggest thing that I witnessed in that discussion was that the commissioners grew a sense of ownership of this plan. Where before, I think there was a sense of kind of this backseat along for the ride. So Thursday was a really nice pivot towards the end goal.
Okay, part of the Regional Planning Commission is that P&D is involved, myself. I just didn't have the time to do it. So Carolyn, it was a board member that didn't get reelected last time, so I asked Carolyn if she'd be willing to do this. If you have anything to add, Carolyn, because you've been going to the meetings.
Yeah, I asked to have this put on here because it's a good reminder that we keep talking about it because some good things are happening. Yeah, I think I think that when we got to this point in time, we probably weren't, because of some of the issues, and not to go back and rehash any of those, we really weren't where we were supposed to, we should have been,
Yep,
right?
moving forward.
Moving forward. So, but I think that after the first couple of meetings, as So Chair Donner Mary Donner is the chair, and staff has worked really hard, but we were noticing that there wasn't that engagement piece over the, starting off because of some of the things that were held over from the prior. And we had a great meeting. We had everybody was very complimentary, and I think it really opened up that conversation and getting people to actually, like you put it perfectly, to have that ownership over the process. So I think we've gotten through the vision, like the key themes that are going to go throughout the whole plan. And next time, I think we're going to be focusing on agriculture. So it will be good to, one of the chapters, the first chapters that we're going to get into is agriculture. So between now and then, hopefully we can get some additional information to help with getting that information out to members to be what they should be looking for.
Okay, sounds good.
So I do have a question. So how does the work that the Workforce Housing Group is doing fit into the 2050 plan? Because retaining that stock and growing it for working people is a long-term, that's a long game. So is that a discussion at the table, and who is doing that?
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
we just had Kim Ulrich, the Executive Director of the County Housing Authority, give a presentation.
Yeah, but the Housing Authority does not reach to the
No,
general population.
That's true.
No, but
And
we
that is,
started
that is always my concern, that this housing issue gets broken off into a different income or eco-socioeconomic structure, and then the general workforce housing falls out of existence. And you don't have a stakeholder for that.
The problem, though, is that we're dealing with the county and not municipalities.
Yeah, but, yes,
And the
and,
municipalities have city, sewer, and water. That's all the difference in the world in workforce housing.
not necessarily, I would disagree with that, but that's a different conversation. I don't want to hold that here, but I want to ask the question. I think we are, in the workforce group, we're saying the county does not build housing. We build bridges between municipalities to encourage the expansion of that. That's all. I just, that's my thing. And
Adam, do you have something you'd like
No,
to
I would
address
say
there?
Some of that conversation, certainly we were presenting numbers just for what Housing Authority does and serves and the people that they serve. And where that kind of was this, it identified and kind of opened that conversation to the need. We talked a lot about in the existing conditions report where there was, I think it was 60% of the people that live here don't work here. And there's, so there's not only job creation demand, but then the housing too. So Mr. Eldridge, Charlie Eldridge was in the room, and after that meeting, it sparked a conversation for workforce housing in Harvard. And it's starting to grow these conversations outside of this room and outside of that group into what is the number, that they need in Harvard. And we have a meeting, I think early next week or late this week, where it's talking about the demand for hundreds.
so maybe we could have the conversation out of this meeting.
That'd be fine. That'd be fine. Okay.
It's still
Great.
there, is I guess what I wanted to.
Well, it's
that's
great to
what I
hear,
wanted to highlight.
Part of the
yeah, great to hear
conversation.
some positive news about the Regional Planning Commission.
Oh, yeah.
Future topics, anyone? I would ask that the Oak Canopy group gets contacted to see if they have any input about the spongy moth and if they see any effects on it. Does anyone else have any? John, you look
Just
like...
one thing, to Lou, your concern about the workforce housing. We were in Springfield last week and with the realtors, and there's a House bill, I think it's 1566, about workforce housing. If a developer is trying to get something that's affordable housing through a municipality, and if this bill goes through, they're having snags with regulations that impede that. They can go down to Springfield, and Springfield will intervene and mediate with them. So it's statewide, the county has nothing to do with
Yeah,
it.
it's great.
But there is legislation that they're working out that probably will pass,
Thank you, Jim.
that will help that.
Okay. No executive session. I would like to make one comment and commend Board Member Teresa Meshes for spending the morning with us. I think that's great when we have other board members attending different committee meetings.
Time coming to sit with us.
So,
Well, I
yeah.
think there were so many people, she moved up. But
Well, I didn't think she'd stick it out, I maybe she wanted to sneak out the back door. Anyway, that was very nice. I hope
I know that we welcome everybody at the table, but I also did everything I wanted to add. I was here listening.
so,
Listening and
I
watching.
hope it was informative.
Yes.
Could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion.
Motion moved by Lou, seconded by Carolyn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.